Welcome back to the home studio and welcome to episode 16 of the Stevie Richards Show. First and foremost, I want to welcome back my co-host, James, who has been getting sent sauna boxes, infrared saunas, and of course, out of anything, when he sees paint chips on the wall that are coming off the wall from all the sweat, he points that out. I'd say, hey, great job with the sauna. Oh, you did say this too, James. You said, oh, yeah, I'm trying to cheat death every week with a new recovery or longevity product.
Yeah, I said Mr. Burns style. Like, you know, the one with with Mulder and Scully in it's the X-Files episode, and then Mr. Burns goes to another thing to cheat death every week, and he's folded in half and then given an injection, then his pupils are massive, and then he glows and radiates in the forest.
That's the one where Homer thought it was an alien, but it was Mr. Burns all shot up with all the feel-good drugs,
Don't be
right?
afraid.
James is a huge Simpsons fan. I'm a huge Family Guy fan, and then we both, well, I got that reference, but usually I won't get the Simpsons references. I even checked out Bob's Burgers or American Dad or these other shows. American Dad I watched a little bit, but it all runs together after a while.
Stevie, the people have spoken. They want you to do this show alone.
No, I will not do that. I will not do that. My voice was enough on a pitch count with a 1-hour show. Although I do want to thank each and every one of you out there for the positive response of episode 15. As a matter of fact, that 1 hour long solo breakdown analysis dedicated well, not the channel, the show was dedicated to the solo breakdown. It really did prompt a lot of people to want the Patreon page to come back. Patreon.com/Stevie Richards. And I think you can explain, James, because this is where the Wrestling Analysis channel kind of like fell off the cliff. And it was a blessing in disguise, in my opinion, because we got to do this show and really up the production and have a team work on something each and every week to improve what we do here at the Stevie Richards Show. But explain to people out there about the content ID, copyright strikes, the blocks, all the things that can happen.
Content ID on YouTube is a very, very annoying thing, by the way. So essentially, if a video is played and it has content ID attached to it, that is a process that has to be manually attached. Basically, all WWE content is content ID'd. All AEW, Warner Brothers movies, all that kind of thing, for the most part anyway, is content ID'd. It runs through YouTube, and basically if you run the video at full speed, even for a few seconds, content ID sooner or later will catch up with you, and then YouTube will do one of three things regarding as far as what the copyright holder, or the alleged copyright holder, because trust me, that's its own minefield, will do. They'll either leave you alone, they'll either claim the monetization of that video, or they will block you partially or wholly, or even have the video removed. So that might even be 4 different things. The reason why we can't do what Stevie did on the old channel, or we can't sort of use footage with impunity, we have the right to a certain extent, because we are doing it for the purpose of review or criticism. But the fact is that you still can't skirt the content ID, because YouTube basically sides with the copyright holder first, and then even try to monetize it as his own battle, which you'll probably never win. So this is why also Stevie's come up with the Patreon, or reigniting the Patreon, as it were, so he can use more footage, as I say, with impunity, and then really get into the nitty-gritty of matches. Whereas on the YouTube videos that we do here, we have to be very careful with how much we play, and for the most part, we either speed through, slow down, reverse the footage, or pause, basically to beat the content ID. This is not something we do for lightly, quite frankly, because it's quite hard to beat content ID. As I say, we have full rights to use this footage. We are using it for criticism and review, and other people will
education too. It's what was the transformative content? What's the term for that? But it's strictly educational as well.
Yeah, well, transformative content doesn't, I mean, it does apply, but it doesn't apply, because transformative content could be reaction videos. Transformative content could be a remix of a song, or a remix of a video, or an overdubbing of a video, or something like that. We fall under review criticism, which is similarly completely allowed. But once again, content ID is an automatic process, and therefore we don't, we want to actually make money off the videos that we do on this channel. Of course, this is why we're doing it as a business. So, that being said, Stevie,
I'm gonna correct you real quick right there. I know what we're doing here as far as that, but the overarching theme, especially with the Wrestling Analysis channel, what happened was I was kind of content with the fact that most of them were going to be demonetized. And that's why I had started the Patreon too, to get more of the longer form stuff that I didn't need to edit, flip the screen, show me with the smartboard, with the glare, all that stuff. But when they started all getting blocked worldwide, it's like I'm making a video that nobody's ever going to see, monetized or demonetized. That's what it all boiled down to in the very, very end. Here's my question for you that people might be thinking too, because it doesn't make sense or it feels like a double standard. I watch plenty of movie review channels. I watch a channel, Emergency Awesome with Charlie. I watch Renaissance Periodization, critiques other fitness people and stuff. They play it in real time, clips that are way longer than 6 seconds, or like Mike will play people saying stuff, or even Shredded Sports Science will play full videos from other channels and never get clipped or blocked. It always
That's
confused me.
That's different though. Content ID is something you have to apply for. So someone like WWE will have every Raw and SmackDown
Or Don Stevens.
Yes, of course, Don Stevens as well with AEW. But that's an automatic process. They will upload their videos to the Content ID, whatever it is, and then that's when it will automatically find it. All of the YouTube channels, for the most part, like WSI or Renaissance Periodization or V-Shred or I nearly said Jeff Stelling, Jeff Cavalier, they won't run their videos through Content ID. And also, if you're referring to another video, you can just use that, put it in yours, and then refer to it and talk to it and react to it, that kind of thing. They're not Content ID videos, so this is why they're still monetized. Whereas something like, as I say, Paramount, Warner Brothers, BBC, anything like that will have been run through Content ID first. Smaller YouTubers or, like me, or as I say, Renaissance Periodization or whatever, they won't run their stuff through Content ID first.
Oh, understood. Okay. So getting back to it, that's why I reactivated the Patreon. I reignited it because what you saw in episode 15 is what I want to do on Patreon with free reign to do that. Meaning if I want to take a match, as a matter of fact, we're going to talk about my Singapore Kane match from WWE against Tommy Dreamer. So with that being said, we're going to show bits and pieces of that finish with the Kane shot, but for Patreon, I'm going to go from the entrance all the way to the finish, play it straight through. Obviously, I'll stop it and I'll use the Smartboard or the iPad app to do that. So it's going to be a minimum of 25, 30-minute video that I don't have to worry about because I'm uploading the content directly onto the Patreon servers. And then we get a certain amount of allotted video storage. And I said during the content announcement, I said, if that runs out or we run into a problem, I have Vimeo where I could throw it up there. It's really a whack-a-mole game. So a year from now, that could all change, and who knows? But we'll take it day by day. That's all we can do.
Yeah. With Patreon, how much is it for people interested? What are people going to get? And I believe there are 2 tiers.
There's technically 3, although 2 is going to be pretty much for the masses of people. There's a $1 thank you tier, which it's basically supporting $1 a month. But I'm going to try to offer perks and benefits for that as well as a thank you to people to do that. The $8 tier is the producer tier. That's going to be, we've recorded a little bit before the show. We're going to record a little bit after the show. Those are going to be included. The show notes, the assets. So when I created that presentation for episode 15, people are going to get that with the correctly spelled aggressive in there, not with 3 R's and 1 G. I don't know. What's Apple doing? My Mac is autocorrect. I think my Mac hates me, but also other things in a dedicated Smartboard segment. I said monthly, but I'm definitely going to over deliver on that. Anytime I feel the need to do up there and throughout the week, as we do our editing, communications with Chris, you or anything else, we have our calls, our little production calls. Those, if I can record them, will be a part of that as well. So you get a great deal of insight into the entire creation process throughout the week for every single episode.
And there's also going to be a sort of like super tier as well, which you're going to offer sort of one-to-one assistance.
One-to-one coach. Thank you for reminding me. I forgot already. I mean, I feel like Dutch now. I already forgot my own Patreon. But what was that address again? So anyway, yes, there is a coaching tier for independent wrestlers or fans that would really like that one-on-one coaching, especially for independent wrestlers. This is my way of doing seminars without going and doing the seminars, which I also would love to do in person. But right now we have a hurricane bearing down on Florida. So let's segue that into the more important part. We should have led with this. Our hearts, our thoughts, our prayers go out to everybody, North Carolina, Tennessee, Georgia, and Florida that got impacted by Hurricane Helene. And by the time you're watching this on Friday, it would have already hit Hurricane Milton, would have already hit the west coast of Florida. I'm on the East Coast, but especially for our WSI member, Dutch, with story time with Dutch Mantel, we're praying for him because he's right there on the west coast somewhere, and we want to make sure he's safe. So hopefully Dutch evacuated and everybody's going to be safe. It's not going to be fun. People's lives are already uprooted from Helene. Milton's going to make it even worse. So we definitely want your thoughts and prayers with all those people.
That being said, we're going to try and get people's mind off stuff. We're going to be talking a lot about cage matches. Now, CM Punk and Drew McIntyre at Bad Blood had a Hell in a Cell match. We're going to actually compare that with a cage match a few weeks earlier at All Out. That was Swerve Strickland and Adam Page as well. We're going to talk about the build-ups. We're going to be talking about the pacing of the match. Well, Stevie is anyway, for goodness sake. No one cares what I think. And basically comparing the two, which one Stevie thinks is better and why. We're going to go super in-depth on that. We've got some more stuff on Bad Blood and WWE. And first off, Stevie, we're going to be talking about something a little different. You sent this me no less than, I think, 3 times in links over the last week. You were really fascinated by it because this character was first portrayed by your good buddy Glenn Jacobs. And now there seems to be, over the years, different kinds of Kanes coming out. We've had Imposter Kane, we've had Blue Kane, and then there was another one that you were particularly enamored by that made the rounds on social media and such this past week.
Wait a minute. Let's be more accurate. I think you and I sent this to each other almost immediately at the same time, right? So don't throw me into this all alone, into the fire, into hellfire and brimstone, so to say. Here's a story from Philadelphia. I used to work downtown at Carver W. Reed for Todd Gordon as I was in ECW. I was Lloyd Van Buren. I used to answer the phones for tickets and answer questions about shows. Yes, Lloyd Van Buren, that was me. But later on, as I lived in Philadelphia, this is probably 96, 97, right after Kane debuted at Hell in a Cell, there was somebody walking around, a huge dude, walking around in full Kane garb, the mask, had the hair, the outfit, the glove. He was about 6'7", 6'8", just walking through Center City. So anytime I would leave Carver W. Reed and walk down the street, there was Kane. So me being the super fan and loving catchphrases would scream, that's gotta be Kane." I would do it every time, and he would get so pissed off. I'm like, "Well, dude, you're the one dressed like Kane walking down in Center City, Philadelphia. You're asking for it." I mean, to me, if I'm walking down the street and somebody screams, "I'll show you," it's like, well, cool, at least somebody remembers, or it's for your own good, or we're taking over. That never happens, but if they did, I wouldn't be mad about it. So there's been a lot of imposter canes, but nothing like this one. Nothing like this one. And I have to say, I wonder, and I'm not being like sarcastic or cynical at all. In 2024, would this be a character that could debut on WWE TV?
Hmm. I'd say, okay, right. How big do you think we haven't even said what the character is yet. It's GAYNE. It's Gay Kane. And I'm sure a photo will come up soon enough to illustrate Gay Kane. It's sort of got like the black where the black should be, and then it's got like white to pink multicolored tie-dye through the rest of it. And then I saw a TikTok video, and for the life of me, I can't remember the song playing on it, and I can't find it. That's it. I'm coming now. And then like he does the pose, and he goes,
Yeah, I did. That was that right there when he came out. Now Glenn's mannerisms, it's kind of like Glenn's mannerisms for Kane or the basic Kane character is like a pet, a dog. So like when you're saying something, you notice he tilt the head like a dog, like, huh? It's very much like an animal. The way Glenn did that, And I don't know if he was coached by Vince or creative, or he came up with that, or he had to study.
No, Kane came up with that himself. I've seen an interview where he actually said he copied a dog.
And he is a dog
Yeah.
lover, so he probably was looking at the way dogs react, but it was such a you talk about minutia, nuance, detail. That character, those the facial expression without showing your face is so important. Mass wrestlers usually cannot get over because they can't convey emotions because you can't see it. But that head tilt, the hair flip, the walk, this GAYNE character, the walk out in front of the Titantron, the round one and that entrance, that it was like Glenn. That's how Glenn walks. So it's incredibly hard to get that down. Also, I just feel like this person on the whole entrance, when you think they're gonna do the fire and they go, I think it's funny. I think it's entertaining. And of course, I sent it to Glenn. I had to. I sent it to just about everybody because it's just like, okay, you can say whatever, you can believe whatever you want on either side of it. I'm looking at it strictly as from a creative and entertainment standpoint. And I'm like, this is fun. This is cool. Now I'll let you bury yourself. Uh
That's fine. That's fine. No, I wasn't going to say anything. I was actually going to run through some of the fake Kanes that have appeared over the years. So I wrote a list of, I could only think of 5, I'm sorry.
By the way, early on when I was doing my imitation thing in WWE, I was for half a second going to be a fake Kane and get beat up.
What?
Yeah. Remember I was imitating Edge and Christian and Gangrel
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and the Acolytes. Yeah, during that era. I wouldn't call it an era. Those few weeks. How's that?
I know you did Dude Love once.
Dude love. Oh, dude, I'll tell you about independent wrestling promotion. There was nothing but fake copycats, which I was included with, and we had great names. Go through the list, and then we'll touch on that because I almost pulled up there's a famous voicemail from a promoter named Mike Sparta, and he would leave voicemails for the wrestlers cursing them out. So if Chris can play the voicemail, it's incredibly entertaining and disturbing. But go through the
Like,
fake
don't-
gains.
don't forget that story. Don't forget that story. So we had the Undertaker first impersonating Kane. He did a great job, and they got to the point where they were like painting on like fake tattoos and stuff like that to like swervy, swervy, swerve. The Undertaker did a great job with it. Because especially, Kane for the most part, or Glenn for the most part, was imitating the Undertaker and then putting his own spin on it. And the Undertaker sort of did it back. Then there was the Imposter Kane, who this was in 2006. This was coming off that See No Evil horror film starring Glenn as Kane. I think was he credited as Kane? Or was he like Glenn Kane Jacobs or whatever? But then he was a babyface after, dragging hooks into teenagers and murdering them, I guess, on screen. And then he was wrestling Imposter Kane, who was played by Drew Gallows or Luke Gallows or whatever, different name. And had the same kind of vibe as Undertaker versus Undertaker. It went so badly that the match was only done once and then you never heard from fake Kane again. And it was the same with Brian Lee back in the day in 94 with the Undertaker thing. And then the fake Kane, he had the big wig on. I thought Paul Stanley straight away. Who did you think when you saw the wig?
I thought elderly woman that just got out from underneath the thing where the rollers come. It was it was literally, yeah, it was literally like Black Dynamite Kane, like like Afro Kane. That hair wig was the worst, man. It looked like, you know what it looked like? I just woke up Kane. I just got out of bed Kane.
So it's like Kane from his past, but only like about 6 hours from his past.
It's actually like me because when I don't put the man bun or anything when I sleep, I just put my hair up over the pillow. But when I wake up, it is literally like, well, it's like that one picture you sent me. I won't show that's the grizzled face you sent me after no sleep. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, it was literally like bedhead Kane that came to the ring.
Do you find, right, because I had long hair ages ago. Do you find that you end up just chewing your own hair at night because you've got to take it out of the thing? And that's why I cut it in the end, because I ended up just blah, 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 at night and it was all over my pillow.
No, not anymore. I mean, I've considered shaving it down here and there, but anytime I've had short hair, those have been the lowest points of my life. Look back at the Right to Censor episodes. Had nothing to do with my hair. I cut my hair and gained 62 pounds afterwards. But yeah, the fake Kane. Let's talk about this. We touched on this before about when styles are too similar, size is too similar, it becomes most times some of the worst wrestling matches you'll ever see. That's what one to one mirror image of Kane is not going to do you any good. I don't know any time in history where maybe even Sid and Undertaker had a decent match at WrestleMania, but it wasn't as good as Sid versus Shawn, Taker versus Shawn, or when they wrestled Brett. That size difference, the gears have to be different. That's why both guys were incredible workers. Brian Lee was severely underrated. Taker's always been a great worker, but their styles and the gears and the moves, they match too much. It's like looking at someone wrestling themselves. And it's good for a one-off or a storyline, but when is just give me your opinion because I don't think it's ever paid off in a positive way. It's always become wrestle crap,
Do you know, I was going to say, I remember Kevin Nash and Undertaker having a pretty good match.
but
But
still
I think
kind of
it,
different styles though, in a way, different characters.
yeah, very similar sizes, but yeah, different characters and different styles as well, I guess. And I was also going to say Undertaker and Kane, even though they're very similar, they had the magic of the storyline. So really, the match, it was, the first time they touched the WrestleMania 14, the magic was there. And then, subsequent ones, not as much, I guess. I think I've said this before. Kane versus Big Show was a drag. And I thought, the two biggest guys in the or two of the biggest guys in the company at the time, and it never really seemed to work out. Or Great Khali and Undertaker, but Great Khali had his own limitations, I guess.
Yeah. The only time I remember, this is where if you have two giants, the only time I think it really ever worked out was the Big John Studd Andre Body Slam Challenge for the $10,000. Remember that? And then he didn't grab it when Andre was throwing the money. I think it was WrestleMania 1, if I'm not mistaken. When
Okay.
you have a gimmick that the giant has never been, and now the horse has already left the barn. Big Show has been slammed, power bombed, choke slammed, probably everything. Do you see what I mean? But back when Andre was never technically slammed, although on the indies, hardly raised, I think tons of people slammed him, but never in mainstream WWE Universal kind of TV. So that's what made that special. And the guys didn't need to do a whole lot, but when you just have two guys trying to wrestle a match that size, it usually never works out.
I'm going to say that Hulk Hogan slammed Andre on WWF TV in like 80, maybe even at Shea Stadium. That's my guess, but I think Hogan did slam Andre. But Andre was slammed like 25 times. That's such a misnomer. I know it's for TV and most kids watching wouldn't know. Like George the Animal, no, not George the Animal Steel. Kamala. I've seen footage of Kamala slamming Andre, and it was nothing. One slam, belly slap, move on. There's no big build up to it, really.
The only other time I watched, actually in the WCW Chamber of Horrors match was when Pillman body slammed Abdullah the Butcher. The story is Abdullah didn't want to Pillman's deceptively strong. He slammed him. If you look at that cage match, it was not pretty, but that right there meant something. But then you got, the electric chair spot at the end. I'm sure you remember that.
Oh my god, yeah, and the lever that keeps falling down before it's meant to. Let's go to a couple more Kanes. Right, back in the day, in the late '90s, early 2000s, I don't have any footage, but I'm just going to tell you this: there was Undertaker UK, The Rock UK, and they'd actually build them as UK, and then there was also Kane UK as well. So we had our own imposter or imposters. Now, a couple of the new ones. We'll get to Gay Kane again in a second, or GAYNE. Blue Kane that came about a couple of years ago, and he was like the anti-Kane where everything was cold and the dude was a foot shorter.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, I think they even had a little snow machine on one of the things that came down when he did it instead of the fire on the ring post. These are all fun. And now I will ask this question. You had Blue Kane, but he kind of disappeared. I wonder if that was a cease and desist from WWE because Kane is still one of the merch sellers when they put stuff out there. I'm sure he still sells merchandise. Now with this one, this is a little bit more, like I said, will WWE bring a character like this in with a new spin for a new audience, in 2024? Never say never. But what I would say is the way it is presented right now, is it copyright infringement? Is there going to be a cease and desist? Because this is making the rounds now. We're talking about it. It's got however many views and likes on TikTok. This dude's going to get booked. So you put him on a poster, that's usually when WWE comes and says, no, you can't advertise this.
Well, it's parody, though. I mean, you know that from the BWO. That was a parody. That was fine.
Parody is, yeah. I mean, back then, the BWO and all that stuff, but I don't know what the laws would be today. Maybe the BWO had what's the reason the laws got changed? I don't know. But you have an entire floor at Stanford in Titan Towers. You're going to fight the entire staff for your indie bookings? I don't know.
We are going to move on now. So we've got quite a lot of video segment after,
Oh, by the way, did you want me to tell a story about the indie promotion with the fakes? Okay. It was up in Massachusetts. A promoter named Mike Sparta. If you look on YouTube, Mike Sparta voicemail, I think it's still up there. And Mike would bring in a fake Undertaker, a fake Patriot who was Tom Brady at the time. It wasn't Del Wilkes. Fake Dude Love. Who else? He would sometimes want fake Diesel, which would be Big Stevie Cole. So I get 2 matches out of it. Doink the Clown. There was not even the Ray Apollo version. It was another version. So we used to call it our buddy Danny Jacks. He was an incredible independent worker and a good dude that I'm still friends with today. And we would joke and try to find names. And they would advertise, I swear, fake would be like font size 2. And then Kane would be like 46 or 52. You know what I mean? It'd be like fake and then Kane, like, and it would have Kane's 8x10, Undertaker's 8x10, all this stuff. So the boys come up with all these funny little things to entertain themselves. So I was fake Dude Love anyway and working in these. So it was either Dude Fake or Fake Love. Then it was the Underfaker. Then it was Fane instead of Kane. Then it was the Fake Red. Then it was Fake the Clown. And we had ring announcers actually announce them as that a couple times, which infuriated the promoter, which was easy to do, by the way. I can't even say the words or the quotes, but I would say, hey, Mike, does WWE know about the Underfaker? And he'd be like, you son of a, and he'd do his little Boston accent. So Chris, be very entertaining. I don't know. You should put up an explicit warning about the voicemail if we even do play it.
Do you know, I was just thinking when you were speaking there, and just like, oh, could GAYNE or, a Kane parody ever make it to WWE TV? Gilbert made it to WWF TV. And he was, and Dwayne Gill was doing Gilbert on the Indies before he did it on WWF television. So he probably suggested it. Yeah.
That's a great point. So, GAYNE, if you become a WWE roster or main roster person, you can thank the show. Tell people to subscribe, click the bell to get notified.
Sign up to the Patreon as well. In fact, there's a really good indie workers Patreon, one-to-one coaching that Stevie could help with. He knows Glenn Jacobs, the original Kane, personally, so he's got the inside track.
I guess I do. Hey, you're going to get me, you got to get the show in trouble if we keep saying I'm friends with Glenn. People don't like that stuff, apparently.
Well, I know you used to play Madden with him. Anyway, right, we're going to carry on. We're going to move on. And we've got quite a lot of video segments for this episode. After just giving a whole diatribe about Patreon, now we're doing more video on Patreon for various reasons. But we couldn't really let this go because back in the old Stevie Richards Wrestling Anal channel, he would look at the botches quite a lot of more of the recent botches from AEW and WWE, and I thought maybe we should bring that back. And there was one that really stood out from WWE's Bad Blood PLE pay-per-view, whatever you want to call it. It was Nia Jax versus Bayley. So, if you want to get that queued up, you can take us through it. What went wrong?
All right, so here's that spot from Bad Blood that James was talking about. Basically, this is a setup for a powerbomb spot that Bayley is going to walk out. By the way, I feel like this is extremely dangerous and the risk versus reward, even with this, Bayley could blow her knee out. They could slip. This, I hate to even bring it up. This had a little bit of a flashback to D'Lo and Draws when she started stepping out from the corner. I was like, she's not going to do like a Liger bomb or try to run with her. And even taking those steps out, Nia is trying to support, having her up here. But at the same time, it's all dead weight that you need to kind of pop your hips and then power bomb her. So that didn't happen. But what happened could have been even more dangerous. And I know what they were trying to do. And as we look at this right here, come out frame by frame, this is what I'm talking about. Nia is set. I will say her feet are wrapped around Bayley's hips in the front. That's smart. She's locked in. She knows they're ready to go. So I have to give the girls credit that they took their time and didn't rush this particular thing. They made sure they were set. Nia's holding on to that turnbuckle, the bar from the turnbuckle to the post. Let's go, and Bayley has her. And here we go. Now, this step out here, these two steps right here are where I get scared because so much can go wrong. She's not going to power bomb her right here just yet, but Bayley, her body right now, that can cause the knee to blow out or any of these other things. Did it? No. Chances are no, but you're in a very, very vulnerable position. And Nia has lost a lot of weight, so I give her credit. But at the same time, she's a big girl, and you definitely want to make sure that nobody gets injured from this spot. And it's not even the finish. So you have to keep going after this. Now, what she's trying to do right here is do a Hurricanrana. Now, this is where it becomes dangerous because Nia could not flip over and put her hips above her head, which I completely understand because I can't do moonsaults. I hate back flipping, but she tried to do it kind of like how, how AJ used to do it from the mat, jump up and do a Hurricanrana to somebody. That style where he kind of like went to the side. So right here, I'll show you. She's doing what AJ's doing, where he tries to sweep his body to the side and kind of throw him over almost like a head scissor, not a Hurricanrana. So I get it in theory, but essentially she couldn't do that. And I'm glad she didn't because she would have landed right on her head and neck. This here would have landed there. But Bayley, the part that makes it wrestle crap and botchamania worthy is Bayley literally almost like you've seen it. She literally lands, Nia lands, Bayley's on her feet. There's one Mississippi, 1.5, and she throws herself over with a hip toss pump. So it's not so much a botch because a botch potentially could have injured one or both of these people. But it's just a goofy, like, I would have rather Bayley just literally let Nia take her bump and shook her head like, no, 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 you're not going to do that. The old Matumbo, rest in peace. No, no, no. And then started doing that. This is where even what seemingly is the most experienced WWE main roster people today in 2024, they still show a level of independent wrestling greenness and inexperience to think, well, she didn't get me, but let me take my own bump. And she sells like she got Hurricanrana. It's really just, it's sad because these girls worked their asses off. And unfortunately, what are they going to be remembered for in this match? This spot. So right here, why would you, it's just, it sucks, James and everybody out there. You know why? People laugh, and we're going to finish that up right there. People laugh enough and smirk and snicker enough at pro wrestling about being stupid, fake, phony, rolling around in your underwear. We give them enough reasons, even with good professional wrestling, to laugh at us. Then you do this, you give them every reason to mock it. And then the people that watch it and are faithfully watching it look at it and say, this isn't what I grew up watching, or this isn't what I want, or they just laugh. And both these girls and everybody who does this, and we're going to watch the cage match between Punk and Drew, there's a real danger factor no matter what you do, cage or no cage, toolbox or no toolbox, chair or no chair, hypodermic needle to the mouth or no hypodermic needle to the mouth. it is still incredibly dangerous. I'll give you an example. Rob Van Dam, one of the most durable, if not the most durable professional wrestler in history. You know how he broke his leg, James?
No, I don't.
Baseball slide drop kick.
Did he catch his leg on the mat?
I think so. So what I'm saying is that guy, one of the toughest, most durable guys, such a freak thing that he's done a million times probably before and even after. And here we are. How many times have you seen a baseball drop kick with somebody on the, against the apron? A million times. But he broke his leg. That's why I'm saying they might be like, well, she had her. They took her time. Those two little steps out from the corner is no man's land. Now you have to set up a base. The power bomb would have actually been an easier way to bump. And then Nia tries to do a backflip to give her the Hurricanrana, and it just looks silly. So I'm not going to beat both girls up for trying something new, trying something that you'd be like, oh my God, Nia did that. But Nia needs to stick to what brought her to the dance and what keeps her on the main roster. The Yokozuna thing, the big wrestler Vader type moves. Doing a Hurricanrana is not going to get her over. You know what it's going to do? People are going to appreciate her work, but you're a heel. They're supposed to hate you. Why are you doing impressive wrestling moves? So as a waste psychology wise, it was a waste just in general because you had people that could do these moves. So why are you doing something that someone else can do better? And then that's not your signature moves that you should be doing. That's just the way I look at it. So they worked
Okay.
hard. The rest of the match was good, but this is the only thing people are going to remember.
I'm going to refer back to the video in a minute. Something you said just then. You sounded a bit like Ole Anderson then, before telling Vader to stop doing moves off the top rope. The difference is that Vader could do them. I understand that. But if Nia Jax could do a moonsault or a Hurricanrana or something like that, what would be the difference between her doing it and Vader doing it?
Well, the difference would be that not many people that size could do that kind of stuff very, very well. Right now, it is a dime a dozen type thing. And also, why are we looking at now? Vader would do moves, but Vader wouldn't counter the babyface's move with that. In other words, Vader wouldn't out wrestle you, then go up for a moonsault. Vader would beat the crap out of you. And then when you were laying there, he would decide, I couldn't beat him with this, that, and the other. If you think about it, Vader would be trying to beat, say, Sting with very ground and pound moves. Then he would be like, I got to go up to the top because I can't beat him on the mat. So let me go and pull this out of my toolbox. See, I'm using the theme still, but he did that as almost a last resort. Not the NXT, like, I've hit him with everything. What do I got to do? But it's very subtle. I hit him with this. I did this. I did a Vader splash. I did all these things. I power bombed him. He kicked out. Now I got to go up for the moonsault. Vader had really good psychology for what he could do. Also, like I said before, Vader was not out wrestling the babyface. This move here is essentially, I'm going to power bomb you, which really, in a way, in this case, is kind of a heel move. Like taking somebody and just driving them through the mat. But you're going to counter it with a Hurricanrana or head scissor that basically does nothing except have somebody take a tumble. Like it's not a move that knocks anybody out. These are the things I wish they would ask themselves and each other before they go out there. And I have no doubt, I didn't watch the whole pay-per-view. Somebody did a Hurricanrana on this show before or after or both.
I've got a theory. I don't know if you can get the video back up, but with that being said, you mentioned that Bayley stepped out. She took 2 steps out to then sort of start the momentum of the Hurricanrana. But then if you look very closely, just before Nia Jax attempts it, Bayley then takes 2 small steps back. So Bayley has lost her base. And then, so she's going backwards while Nia Jax is trying to go forward.
Ooh, good eye, James. See, you need to put your input in this. I didn't notice that. So you took 2 steps out. We're gonna play it slow. So these 2 steps come out. 1, 2, and these steps are not sure-footed steps, right? They're shuffle steps. Like, I don't know if I can do that. Only this is also the danger of this. I'll bring the pen back. All right. Where's Bayley's head? Right here. What can she see? The 0. A big goose egg. You can't even see where you're walking. Her face is right in Nia's stomach. And Nia can't see where she's going because she's looking this way. So both are kind of blind right now, if you think about it. So she takes those steps out, and great catch, James. Step back. That's weird. Why would you do that? And this is weird too, because look, when you take the steps back, your feet are right near the ropes. So if she does the Hurricanrana, your heels could catch that bottom rope, and really everybody's in danger. Why step up to step back? That's very strange.
I'd suggest it's just pure, just too much weight, tiredness. I don't know where in the match this was, but you're tired. When you're practicing these matches, you correct me if I'm wrong. When you're practicing these matches hours before, you're in the ring, the pressure's off, there's no fans watching you, and also you haven't wrestled 5-10 minutes as well. So this is you are fresher when you attempt it first time, I guess. So maybe that's why she felt more comfortable to step out. But then all those factors added onto it. She loses her balance a little bit. And then, as I say, she's stepping backwards while Nia Jax is trying to go forwards. Would it have not been safer? And you just said something before then. Does Bayley have to step out a bit for the Hurricanrana? Or would it have been possible for Bayley to basically get a base on the road, basically lean in the corner and then flip forward? But you said that she may have caught her heels on the bottom rope, and that could have been even more dangerous.
Yeah, you need to step out. I understand. Here's another thing. Why couldn't she stop her, put Bayley on the second, stand on the top, and hit the Hurricanrana? She didn't have enough. She didn't have enough confidence, and I can understand it because I don't either. To put your head underneath your hips to get that flip. Here's another thing. At the basis of it all, let's back up. And if you can look this up, James, how tall is Nia Jax? How tall is Bayley? Much like when Ridge Holland and Big E, why would you give him that kind of suplex on the outside when you're probably 5 inches shorter than Big E, if not more? Do you see there? Right there, the height right there is to something that now if Bayley is going to do that to Nia Jax, she has a heavier girl to base off of, and Nia Jax is basically taller, which means Bayley and her head can clear on the backflip. This is the opposite.
Nia Jax is billed at 6 foot. Bayley is billed at 5'6". So assuming they are putting on the same amount of height, or even if they need to, there's at least 5-6 inches difference between them.
And that's a big difference when you're backflipping and someone is shorter than you, you're going to hit your head. And I'm convinced Nia kind of knew that when she was in it and said, oh, if I go straight backwards, I'm not going to be able to, we're going to both get crunched. So I got to go sideways, kind of like Ray does for the 619, which I appreciate. But Rey Mysterio is also not 6 foot doing it to a 5'6" person. He can do it to Dom, who's taller, but Ray being shorter is literally having all those inches underneath him to sweep his head by. We asked this on the Raw SmackDown review with Russo and Ben. What's going on with the agents, with the producers? Do we have an AEW situation? We're going to talk about the toolbox spot. Do we have an AEW situation where the inmates are running the asylum? What I'm seeing here with promos and matches, we're going to talk about the bad blood thing, and I think I want to focus on SmackDown. You want to talk about an overbooked, ultra-violent go-home show the day before a pay-per-view. To me, what producers, writers, or Triple H for that matter, would allow these things to happen where potentially you can get hurt or it just doesn't make any sense? The agents and producers should be stopping this and saying, wait a minute, what are you rehearsing? No, no, no. No, you're too short, you're too tall. Rey Mysterio, this person's on the show doing it. Why would you even bother? but there's a disconnect. Do you feel that?
I don't feel that anywhere near as much as AEW. I really don't. I think
But we vilify AEW for it. We can't let WWE get a pass for
yeah.
that. Now, the cage match, one had more story than the other. We're going to get to that, but there needs to be checks and balances. And I'm one of the guys back in the day would be so frustrated about being handcuffed in a lot of ways. But as months and years went by, and I got a perspective, a true, honest perspective, not my ego, an honest perspective on where I am currently on the card, what the card is, who the main events are, who are the people doing ultra-violent stuff, and where my match needs to fit in. Not have the best match on the show, but where the best match for my spot on the show. That's very important.
So we're going to get into the meat of the show now. What this show, I nearly said podcast, what this show is built upon. And we're going to be talking about WWE and AEW. And more specifically, we're going to be talking about their versions of cage matches. Now, a few weeks ago, it's All Out AEW. They main evented their All Out pay-per-view 2024 with Adam Page versus Swerve Strickland, a blood feud that's been boiling for a year, sort of, and then just gone away for 6 months, and then they just reignited it again. But that's its own thing in a second. And then on WWE side, Bad Blood, Hell in a Cell, it's CM Punk versus Drew McIntyre. So, that being said, the build-up, CM Punk and Drew McIntyre, I'm sure you all know this, but I'm going to rifle through this quickly. Built since the day Punk returned to WWE Survivor Series 2023, Drew McIntyre, I believe, or it was at least said, legitimately stormed out or had a hissy fit of Punk returning. I gather they didn't get along too well, and then he got over himself quite quickly. They ended up working together. Punk would be injured at the Royal Rumble 2024. But he wouldn't be missing from WWE television very long at all. He would turn up injured for months on end. They would do promo battles. They would attack each other. Punk would cost Drew the World Championship, the Raw version of the World Championship, more than once, I believe. And then this was sort of the rubber match, the best of 3 series. Punk won one, SummerSlam, I believe. No, I'm sorry. Drew won at SummerSlam. Punk won at Bash at Berlin, and then this was the rubber match to see who would sort of end the feud once and for all. Page and Swerve's build-up was completely different. They sort of had a blood feud in AEW in the second half of 2023, sort of culminated almost as far as angles go, where Swerve broke into Adam Page's house and hovered over his children and threatened his family. And then they had blood feud matches, blood drinking matches at one point that was quite the bone of contention with some people. And then the feud completely cooled off. They both flip-flopped from babyface to heel a couple of times. Swerve lost his AEW World Championship to Bryan Danielson at All In Wembley. Adam Page sort of got involved towards the end. He tried to get involved. And then their feud was reignited. Not so much culminating, I guess, because I think it's going to be carrying on from here eventually. But they ended up in a cage match a few weeks ago, All Out. So having said all of that, I think there's a very important distinction that, once again, Swerve and Page have flip-flopped between babyface and heel, both of them, over the past year, a good couple of times, whereas Punk has pretty much been the babyface against Drew for the majority of their feud, to the point where Seth Rollins was actually meant to be with Punk, and then just Drew was just so good at what he did. Seth has sort of almost been pushed to the wayside, I guess.
Yeah, this thing with Punk and especially Drew. Let's talk about Drew because Drew really does deserve a lot of credit for reinventing himself. And like you said, maybe he wasn't particularly in realistic terms happy about Punk coming back to WWE, but he saw the business in it. And I give WWE credit. The Punk injury, not just kind of sweeping it under the carpet and Punk goes away. Drew took responsibility. He prayed for it to happen. I mean, it really gave Drew a whole new fresh coat of paint.
Did it remind you of Steve Austin? I'm sorry to interrupt. Did it remind you of Steve Austin when his neck got injured and then he was on TV every week for months and he got more over than he would if he was just wrestling every week?
It's a great analogy. Welcome back, James. I missed you. So
Oh, thank you.
great stuff. This reminds me exactly how turning chicken, you know what, into chicken salad. This is definitely making the most out of a bad situation. I wish WWE and wrestling in general would do this on every level. Imagine how many talents would be super over, like in AEW. Hate to beat up AEW, we're gonna talk about it, but when somebody just gets injured or something happens, they literally disappear. They come back as a surprise, and people act like people are supposed to remember. "Oh my god, he's back," and it's like, "Okay, why is he back? Why was he gone?" All this stuff. The Punk thing with Drew was done to perfection. It really was, and I made a note we're gonna talk specifically about the cage match of Bad Blood. Even something as simple and childish, in my opinion, as a bracelet, added another layer to the personal differences, the personal hatred between these 2 guys. No, that's you might see it on paper and go, "A bracelet?" But they made chicken you know what in the chicken salad. It is really done well. I'm gonna give you a little bit of background on Drew. Drew came in as the chosen one. He got the IC belt. He was too much too soon. Ended up getting released. Or did he? No, no, he got released after the three-man band thing, right?
Yeah, was it like 2014 or 2016? He was gone for years.
Well, let's just look at basically he started out with a mega push. Too much too soon, too young, chosen one, all that stuff. And then he was in pretty much a comedy act, him, Heath Slater, Jinder Mahal, which Jinder Mahal, man, they should have did more with that guy. He should be right up there with Drew, in my opinion. Then Drew did go away, went to the Indies. I remember when he was a Evolve champion, I worked him on a show in Nebraska. Really great guy, great worker even back then. Then he went to Impact as Drew Galloway, got over there, super over him. Let's not forget about Bobby Lashley, got over while he was there as well. Went back to WWE, looked great, looked completely different, won the title at possibly the worst time ever in the business during the COVID era. No crowds, no nothing. Now, in general, and then they took the belt off him, obviously. Crowds came back, all that stuff. Drew never got the run he should have got, but it lends to the long term storytelling of Drew's his character. The heel has to have a truth. Everything that's happened to Drew really happened. Drew has a case for being bitter that he didn't get another opportunity after the COVID era. That's a piece of it. Then throwing a tantrum with the Punk thing, which we don't know if it was real or not, could be a work. But if it was real, the office saw this as wow. We can blend reality into the fake world of wrestling. Punk gets hurt, tears his tricep off a pretty innocuous the Future Jock DDT, right? Okay. They could have swept that under the carpet. They could have said, well, we want Drew to work. Maybe Drew was supposed to work somebody else. Maybe Punk was supposed to work Seth Rollins, like you said, or work Roman Reigns. But they saw money there. And that promo Drew cut was one of the best promos I've ever seen about I prayed for this. Dude, the crowd, it was such, it wasn't like even an ooh, it was like, did he just say that for real? You know what I mean? It brought a whole new layer to the pettiness, the bitterness, the jealousy, and all the things. And in a weird way, like you say in the notes, it made him immensely more entertaining as a heel. Drew is literally the best thing, in my opinion, to come along in the past couple of years in wrestling. That character is awesome. And Punk would not be anywhere near as over if he was just going for a title. This here proves, in a way, that guys that are over and guys that can get over more accurately don't need a belt.
With Drew McIntyre, I liken him to Batista for a very specific reason. Do you remember? I think it was last year, and there was constant talk about Drew not signing contract. And he seemed to, I don't know if he was either working on a short-term extension or he was working through injury time tacked on to the end of it. So he, it was supposed to be at the beginning of the year, then it was April, and then so and so. And then eventually, obviously, re-signed for big money and good luck to him.
My God, if that was me, I'd still be under contract with WWE. Extending
for injury time.
Yeah. I'd be going on my 25th or 30th year there.
With Batista, he only got really good in his last year. He got the personality. He knew he was leaving, and it almost gave him the Hey, I'm going, baby. I don't give a crap anymore.
He was
And
the
then
Hollywood
went,
Rock. He was basically Hollywood Rock in a way.
Exactly. He got the stupid outfits on, which turns out they weren't a gimmick. That was him. And just his promos got 4 million times better. And it's one of those things where it's almost like when the pressure's off, when they can't do anything to you, is when you create your best work. And unlike Batista, who left for whatever he left for, the movies and just sick of being in WWE, I guess, Drew re-signed, but he's continued that momentum. He's continued that character.
Yeah, and we thought, when I saw him with the sword and the kilt and everything at one time, and that was Vince's sword that Hunter and Stephanie bought for him as a birthday present. I can't
I didn't
imagine,
know.
like, you know what I don't have? You know what I don't have and what would make a great birthday present? A friggin' longsword. That would be just, I got everything. I got planes, cars, got my own gas station at the Greenwich House, but no sword. Like, where are you going to put that? I mean, this is also a guy that had a T-Rex head on his wall. So, wait, let me stop. Let me back up. Yes, this makes perfect sense. But then that was Vince's sword.
For the man who has everything, I
Yeah.
guess.
So when you and I are multimillionaires from this super successful show, please we'll get a PO box. The mailbox might not be big enough for a long sword, maybe a little flip, Scottish knife or whatever would do.
Yeah. Or sporran or something if we're going to keep with the Scottish thing. Or some porridge oats.
For anybody that feels one way or another about Punk, especially, that's great because characters, no matter what, you need to feel a certain way about them. So if you like Punk or you hate him, you think he's a cancer in the business, you feel that way. You have raw energy. You either want to go see him win or you want to pay to see him get beat up. That's the point.
Punk's a funny one, isn't he? Why is he so divisive? Why is he somebody that you have to have an opinion on if you're a wrestling fan? Because you're on one side or the other, you're not indifferent to him, which I suppose is the best way to be.
I have no idea. I have no idea. It could be the it factor, but the it factor is also a very polarizing it factor. That's the thing. Punk will always be over because half the audience will love him and half the audience will hate him. So whether you turn him one way or the other, that 50% is always going to like him. And that 50% is always going to hate him. And I thought, in a way, when Drew was starting to be super entertaining as a heel, I thought for a fact we'd see a double turn. That Punk would become the heel and Drew would be the babyface. Because Drew had way too many truths that he was speaking. But that 50% that dig their heels in the ground and love Punk no matter what, keep Drew a heel. And when you think about it, even if half the people hate both of them and love both of them, that's 100% interest, no matter which way you look at it.
See, that's what they thought they had with Roman Reigns, I think. But with Punk, they actually do have it in that sense. Let's go to the actual cage matches now. We're going to do Swerve Strickland and Adam Page first. I don't know if you want to review each match separately and then compare them, or you want to do them sort of concurrently, as it were. But over to you, however you want to do it.
I'd like to compare both of them at the same time because I think there is a stark difference. I don't want to go straight through one and then the other because I think we just stop and talk about each one. Now let's talk about, we don't talk about the needles and all that stuff, but the overarching thing, the storyline, you had touched on that. With Punk and Drew, it's got a definitive weekly, episodic, and then throughout pay-per-views, even monthly or every 3 weeks, however, you know, whatever the interval is, the storyline is progressing each time. Each person has something to say. Sure, you sprinkle in Seth Rollins here and there, Damian Priest here and there. You have these people that kind of come into the universe of the solar system of Punk and Drew, but then they go back off into their program. So everybody is kind of like getting everybody over within those. With Swerve and Page, it's literally a stop, start, stop, start, stop type of thing that I tried to look back to see, okay, a year ago you told me they had this angle. And then the Swerve thing, which I didn't even remember that he did something personal with Page's kids, and then Page burned his house down. But Page burned his house down how many months after that?
A year? Almost, and keep in mind that I always want to bring up.
He must not have been that mad at him then, right? That's what I look at. He must not have been that pissed off.
Well, Page disappeared from TV for quite a while, and Swerve turned from, I'm pretty sure, heel to babyface to heel to babyface to heel again. I might have added one or two in extra, but he switched. Not hard switches, but soft switches from babyface to heel. So, but then who's the babyface and who's the heel in this? Because Swerve is threatening Adam Page's children. Adam Page has burnt Swerve's childhood house down. Who's in the right and who's in the wrong here?
Well, let's look within the match itself, which you and I watched this morning. Who's the babyface and the heel within the match? Dare I say, when Page gave him that, like, he stuck him with the chair in his head, and Swerve starts laughing and saying, "Give me more," and Page is standing over talking crap to him. I'm like, I'm sympathetic for Swerve at that point. You power bomb him on the cinder block. You take out his grill and stick a needle in his mouth. You give him an unprotected chair shot, which Swerve keeps coming back from. So this reminded me of? Not on the level of storytelling at all, and we'll get to that in a second. This reminded me of the double turn at WrestleMania 13 with Austin and Brett. Because I found myself saying, come on, Swerve, man, either let yourself get pinned and fight another day, or keep going, dude. You got balls. You have a lot of guts. You're tougher than I can. I was appreciating Swerve, and I was saying, why is Page being such a dick to him and going above and beyond this type of thing? Now, if this was a week after, or like a few days after Swerve was torturing his children or something, or doing some shit that he shouldn't be doing, excuse my language, but doing some stuff he should not be doing, now it's fresh. You messed with my family. You messed with my kids. Now I'm beside myself. I'm not me anymore. I'm now an animal. I'm a protective dad. But a year later, like I don't get it. Do you see what I mean about the timing of it? Like you had too many spaces of dead weeks and months for me to still care about this. Because if Page didn't come right after Swerve, if he burned his house down the week after, I get it. And then the cage match is the week after that. But give me a timeline. So it was a year ago when Swerve was messing with his kids. Then how long?
Yeah, we're talking the autumn of 2023. Yeah.
So when did he burn the house down? Before All In.
Yeah, like 2 weeks. Yeah, it was the week before All In, All Out. I'm sorry.
The week before the pay-per-view. Right. Let's think about this.
It's like the week before the cage match.
Oh, he burned his house down the week before the cage match.
Yeah.
So you're cheering for Adam Page after that?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, you can see why he did it, but you can't see why he did it a year after the fact.
That's what I'm saying. From a storyline perspective, everything, and I'm not saying the story wasn't good. I'm just saying the format of the story is, think about it. Even with these clips, okay? There's a certain amount of people that when they see a 20, 30-minute clip, even if it's something super interesting, I don't have time to watch it. Okay? It could be the greatest clip ever. This could be the greatest storyline ever, the greatest angle ever, the most personal one you will ever see. But number one, so many weeks and hours and months of wrestling will pass by to where I had to go back and look at it again to remember it. How many fans are going to do that? And if you B-roll in a package before the match, that's almost too late. You almost want to, like, in other words, if all these things happened and you want to sell the pay-per-view match in the cage, all this stuff has to be brought up in the weeks and months previous to the cage match. It's like the horses left the barn, and also, in a definite way, I think the main way is if Adam Page isn't mad enough at Swerve to want to kill him the very next week or burn his house down the very next week, why should I care? Does that make sense?
With the match itself, I know we're going to get to Hell in a Cell as well soon enough, but with the match itself between Swerve and Adam Page, how did you feel it was laid out? And how did you feel it was laid out as compared to Punk and Drew?
They're complete 180s of each other. In the AEW match, unfortunately, because the violence, the bumps that especially Swerve took, and each guy, the punishment they took, it took a little bit off their career. It was not, something that you want people to ever forget. But guess what? It was a very forgettable match because a lot of things in the match, and I think I explained it in the pre-production meeting, we were talking about it, and I said, it's so weird. It felt like whenever they needed to turn up the gear, that's when things came to a grinding halt. And whenever they needed to breathe, that's when they rushed. It felt completely backwards. And you kind of agreed with that feeling. Like it felt like I don't know how long these cage matches were from a time perspective, but the cage match in AEW felt 4 or 5 times longer than the Bad Blood one.
With for my notes, and because I've written copious notes, as I'm sure you've seen, the Patreon subscribers will see as well for whatever it's worth. I immediately, apart from the production, when you compare AEW to WWE now, we're not going to get into this too much, but I know that AEW, and everybody knows that AEW has had a huge bump in rights fees for Warner Brothers Media for another 3 years, and I suggest they put a lot of money into the production and more lighting, for goodness sake, because I always have always said this. You'll know this, Stevie, more than most as far as colour goes. WWE has realistic warmth colour. They look lifelike on screen. If you saw Punk face to face, he'd look just like he did in on screen. Whereas in AEW, everything's really cold, everything's really cool, everything's really blue. It's got a purplish, bluish hue to it. And I always, always harp on this. It's off-putting. It might look a bit grittier on occasion, a little less a smooth sheen on it. But that's the first thing I always notice when I see AEW and then WWE straight after, or vice versa. It's just how cold the visuals look on it. And then as far as the match goes, you tell me if you thought this. They're in a blood feud, and then within a minute and a half, they're tired. I would have thought, in a blood feud, you'd be punching each other to death for, 10 minutes, and then you eventually start slowing down and da-da-da. Then you get into the bigger spots, etc. Whereas the match with Adam Page and Swerve Strickland, I felt, they got to the staplers. Immediately, they were tired after a minute and a half of brawling. They didn't seem to brawl very much. Then they introduced the staplers, which they no-sold. And then with Swerve did, Adam Page didn't. And I thought, one, that was a weird thing to sort of bring out really early in the match, something that extreme, because then you've got to build upon that, even to get even more extreme, which they did with the cinder block and the hypodermic needle and such. But then there were so many gaps of nothing, and then something big would happen, and then just huge swathes of just resting on nothing, and it just felt going from spot to spot, whereas I felt Punk and Drew didn't. It felt far more organic.
What I think the adjectives or the words you're looking for was the Adam Page Swerve match was way too loose in the way it was put together. Punk and Drew is a tight format within the match. Now, I don't know how much they rehearsed this. I'm assuming they really do go through everything because it is really dependent upon the plunder, as a commentator would say. You need to be in a particular spot. It needs to be here. We need to go here. That's what confused me about the Swerve Page match. It felt very random. It was like, okay, this is really painful. This is really dangerous. This is really a powerful weapon. Then we have a less powerful weapon second. There wasn't a shift up with the danger of the weapons. In other words, I would think the grill thing and the needle would be somewhere in there where it wouldn't knock them out or do anything. You shouldn't have done it in the first place. But looking at it, wouldn't the cinder block be a finish above a chair shot? How many chair shots have we seen on that show alone? Probably. Wouldn't a power block, which hurts for real. So if I'm a worker, and I would, first of all, I would say we're not doing it. And like I said, the cinder block spot should have been cinder block over his balls because he messed with your family, right? What's the biggest way to hurt a man? pretty much put a cinder block on his balls, take a sledgehammer, and smash the cinder block over his balls. That to me feel like a very personal finish. You know, you mess with my kids, I'll make sure you never have kids again. He could have said that in a promo. Then people would get it. Oh, this is what he's talking about. Now that chair shot alone, and Chris put up a screenshot, if you could please. Why in the world would you swing a chair, which the chair shots, you can talk about CT or whatever, know that you're swinging a chair, or production knows you're swinging a chair with all your might as the finish over Swerve's head. You have the perfect camera angle inside the cage. And you cut to the furthest hard camera shot covering it with the cage, and I don't even see it. And I asked you, was that live or they edited that in post on YouTube? You go, no, that was live. Why would you cut away from it? If I'm taking a chair shot that I know is going to rattle and scramble my brain, you better get a close up and keep it there. I'm not taking it for nothing. You're putting your glass, you're trying to find a chair shot?
No, I'm trying to find two different pairs of glasses so I can see.
I get it right here.
Oh.
That's all right. We got the thumbnail there, Chris, earlier. So clickbait Chris with the thumbnail. So, I mean, dude, that's what I mean. Like the danger of the weapons has a psychology. Now you should say, well, you don't stick a needle in someone's mouth. But what I'm saying is the needle in the mouth, the staple, all that stuff, it's going to hurt. It's going to annoy you. It's going to make people turn away. But at the same time, you put it towards the end of the match. The cinder block, even if you didn't, even if you're going to do it the way they did it with the power bomb, that's a finish. Because what if you power bombed them, which you did, on the cinder block, and God forbid, Swerve, his legs go numb. He has a stinger. And now you got to get him, you got to put him up on his knees, set him up, and hit him with a chair when the dude obviously has a very severe stinger. That's the other thing, too. You power bomb this guy on a cinder block. Spinal injury right there, right? His spine is compromised. Then you're going to turn around, well, that was the lower back. Let me hit him over the head with a chair and compress the upper spine. It just doesn't make any sense. I feel for both guys. I like Swerve. I don't know Adam Page. But once again, where are the agents? Where's Tony Khan at? Did Tony Khan clear that? Or worse than that, did Tony Khan come up with that?
It's also amusing to think that Swerve Strickland no-sold the staplers, whereas Adam Page did, of course. But then the hypodermic needle was too much for Swerve. Let me also mention something else on a production level. And I promise you.
Can I say something about the production thing real quick, just before I forget?
Oh, yeah.
If you're a tech nerd and a video editing nerd and a color grading nerd, like I try to be, but I'm not very good, it's like AEW is shot in S-Log 3, basically log footage that's very overexposed and it's not saturated. It looks grainy, but WWE adds the color grade to it to give it that look, to give it the look. And AEW feels like they leave that part out of it. Do you feel that way?
Oh God, absolutely. The amount of screen grabs, and this is why I'm like more attuned. Color grade is what I was going for before. It's why I'm so attuned to the color of it, because I've taken so many screen grabs for thumbnails over the years of AEW, and it's always got this purplish, overly dark tone. I mean, I know partially they don't like the entire arenas because there's not that many people in the arenas for the TV tapings, at least not the pay-per-views. But I mean, it's so dark, apart from the ring sometimes, and then, as I say, it's just got a very cool, low temperature film on it. One more thing I wanted to mention about production is we watched this a few weeks ago, where there was two bumps on a cinder block. Obviously, there was the power bomb that Swerve took, which should have been the finish. Really, it was horrendous. And then we can also get to Drew McIntyre doing something very similar on the steps in a second. But we both thought when we first watched the vertebreaker that Adam Page landed on the cinder block with, we thought he totally missed. Only afterwards, watching the full match, did we realise that he'd grazed the cinder block, and there was like a rectangle of grazed skin on Page's back. It was perfectly placed for minimal injury, I'll say that. But the way it was shot, it looks like he missed it by half a foot.
Yeah, so that's the worst of everything. It hurts like hell. It scraped you. It could have took your skin off, but it looked fake. That's when I go back to the Bayley and Nia Jax thing. You kind of exposed the business. You got to be careful about that. And just in general, you'll always bumps hurt no matter what. But you definitely want to try to take the flattest bump that you can. And the cinder block is not flat. That's where the danger comes in. So we talked about it too. Do you think this is also getting out of control in WWE and AEW because there are no house shows? You don't have to wrestle the next day anymore. So you're almost going to kill yourself because you have a week or 10 days to recover.
I find it nowhere near as egregious with WWE because it always seems to be in the context of it always seems to be the pro wrestling first and then spots added to spice it up first. Whereas with the cage match with Swerve and Adam, it felt spots came first and then we'll just sort of just make a match around them.
Well, I would disagree if you watch SmackDown before Bad Blood. And then we could talk about that during the Bad Blood, during the breakdown of the toolbox.
Yeah.
They overbooked that with spots on a go home show with almost as much violence, if not more, in gimmick matches than Bad Blood had, but you didn't have to pay for it.
With the cinder block thing, with Swerve landing on it on the small of his back, and then I wanted to draw a comparison to Drew taking his own bump, essentially. He missed a Claymore and then he landed on the steps. Which of the two did you find more egregious, I guess, violent, or more risky? Or were the both as risky as each other, quite frankly?
I think the cinder block, I think Drew's was a botch because he wanted to land his back on the top of the ring steps, but he fell a little short. But Drew still most of his upper back and middle back landed on the mat. He just kind of hit the tailbone, which is not a great feeling, by the way. But also, it was his finish he was going for, and Punk moved. Think about it. He basically was going for the finish. So still within the psychology, Punk got out of the way, and Drew the heel paid the price himself for trying to go for the Claymore in that instant. He took himself out. In other words, the cinder block spot, which should have been the finish, it wasn't Adam Page's finish. Now, I would say if you had a gimmick cinder block, I would have loved to seen him hit that pile driver thing, what's called the dead eye,
Yeah.
onto a gimmick cinder block. Even then, with Adam Page landing on his ass on a cinder block and protecting Swerve, it's his finish. A basic power bomb that you saw how many times during that show. That's the difference. The psychology of why Drew won for the Claymore and pretty much a you know what, trying to go for it gets him over a little bit for being a heel. That's the way I looked at it. Now, did it feel good? No. I don't think it was meant to be that kind of bump, but you sure as hell know that power bomb on the center block was meant to be a power bomb on a center block.
There's one more production thing I want to mention that I forgot to mention beforehand, but it's more of a conceptual thing within the match. But I wanted to also mention Hell in a Cell had the advantage of going first. The reason that Hell in a Cell went, sorry, camera's up there. The reason that Hell in a Cell went first instead of last or semi-main event is because The Rock was appearing in the main event of Hell in a Cell, so therefore Punk and Drew had to be first. Because like I imagine The Rock now, like HBK before him, I only worked the main events, so I think that was figuring into it. Swerve and Strickland was the main event, but also keep in mind that there was a hardcore match an hour earlier, and also Bryan Danielson had been suffocated with a plastic bag.
What attempted murder, yeah.
So yeah, there was quite a lot of hardcore stuff going on before then as well, so that's hampered them. But something else what I'd mention, and I mentioned this to you, Stevie, before, quite recently, I believe, was I went to All In last year at Wembley, and there was like a 8-man hardcore match, you know, one of them tornado deals. And at one point, I'm 18 rows back on the floor. I'm not far away from the ring. I've got my glasses on the whole bit. At one point, they get some broken glass, tempered glass, you know, like a bus shelter kind of stuff, and then throw it on the mat. Nobody reacts because we didn't know what it was. It could have been anything. And then it was sort of the same thing in this match All Out with Swerve and Page, is that the burnt, charred bit of wood, I don't think it had been established well enough prior to Page using it because the fans weren't reacting to what it was, and I didn't really know what it was, at least until they started tried to start using it on each other, and it took a while for the fans to get into the point of knowing what it was. Oh, it's a dangerous weapon. Oh, I see the point of why it's being used.
Yeah, I mean, the glass, we talked about that before, that if you have clear glass and you put it on the mat, people probably aren't gonna see it. So, like, in the beer bottle spot I did in the match I broke down in episode 15, it was a darker thing. Now, with the beer bottle, what you can also do is have the beer bottle, take it out of a sack, show the beer bottle, put the beer bottle back in the sack, put it down, step on it, and then kind of spread it around with it being the darker color. People get that. You're feeding them exactly. It's here, put it in here, put it down, look around, step, make sure you shatter it, pick up the sack, and then you get the spot like the thumbtacks where you spread it all over the mat. I think people think this is the ego of wrestlers, including myself, because we know, because we get it, because we wrote the angle, we worked all the matches. We don't feel like we need to spoon feed and remind the fans within everything I just described takes an extra 15, 20 seconds off the match. Not a long time to explain it. Also, didn't you tell me one time or at that pay-per-view that the glass broke? Oh no, that was the Darby Allin one when he went through the table that was glass and the glass went out into the crowd.
Mm.
Dude, that's
Yeah, that
another
was me who told you that.
well, we did talk about it a little bit during the Darby Allin thing, I think, with Sting.
What do you think of the commentary? In fact, I'm sorry. Before we get to commentary, I want to mention also.
I want to say this
Yeah.
too, and I want your input on this. What do you think about the cage match going first, as opposed to if you did want The Rock last, the cage match going right before the main event of a pay-per-view, by the way, named Bad Blood, which I argue should have been the main event.
The problem with that is, I think Cody and Roman and The Rock are all smart enough to know that they can't follow that immediately. So it's almost like the opposite. And I'm sure we've probably mentioned this, the Triple H Jericho thing from WrestleMania 18. Triple H insisted the world title go on last. And what happened? He had a terrible build and no one cared, especially because you followed The Rock and Hulk Hogan. Like sometimes you've got to hold your hands up and say, we can't follow this. But in Cody and Roman and whoever else's defense who decided this, there was enough space between Hell in a Cell and the main event that it almost resets the crowd. And it wasn't like a lackluster mid card, but it wasn't majorly important. So that there was a what's it always in the business? They always say if you're not going to be on last, be on first.
Well, being on first is great. It's like an eliminated from Battle Royal first. You're the locker room winner. Yeah. Nobody's seen anything. Now, I would argue to say, remember SummerSlam, double main event? I think it was Warrior and Rude, and I think it was Hogan and Savage, possibly 88 or something like that. It was Atlantic City, SummerSlam. It was a double main event. And dare I say it, I would put the cage match before what you would consider to be intermission, and then that there'll be enough space, but you get enough warm-up matches for the cage match. When the cage match was first, there's also a danger that the fans will be prematurely exhausted by the time the main event happens. They don't get a chance to breathe.
There was something else I wanted to mention very quickly before there was
I
commentary.
think it was SummerSlam 90. I'm sorry, 90.
Yeah, 88 was
88 was the Meadowlands. 88 was the Meadowlands. It was Warrior beating Hockey Talk Man. It was an excellent opening match between the Hart Foundation and the Brainbusters, I think. I remember that. Because they did, you want to talk about production? I love the fact that they started off hot on the pay-per-view. They did the opening kind of package, and it was Tony Schiavone, I believe. It was like, welcome to the Meadowlands, welcome to Southside, and the Hart Foundation music hit, and the people were hot, like right off the bat. It was awesome.
With mentioning the steak, the woods, well, it's basically a steak, the charred wood or whatever. The one thing that WWE did really well, production value wise, is the beads. They really focused on every single fan in the arena got it, even though they're very, very small objects. Every single fan got it. I just want to mention that. The commentary, I must say, I probably preferred AEW's commentary because it's Jim Ross, it's Tony Schiavone, it's Taz, and also Excalibur's there. But the other three, I really like as commentators, and I thought, Jim Ross still brings that emotion. But also, I had to write this down. Jim Ross says during this staple gun, and Swerve is just taking it and laughing. Jim Ross says, I guess when you're pissed off, you can absorb those things, apparently. I was like, it's just got to be snide.
He's got a lot of Easter eggs where he's like, this is some dumb, you know what, right? This doesn't. JR still sounds like an AEW. He sounds like the WWE commentator on an AEW show. It does not fit. I'm sorry. In my opinion, he's so far above what he's commentating.
We've talked enough about Swerve and Page. CM Punk, Drew McIntyre. We're going to be getting into the toolbox thing after we compare the after Stevie compares the cage matches. But as a match being put together, the pacing, the psychology, how does it compare? How does it differ?
Oh, hey, 1,000,000% better, in my opinion. The storyline, and a powerful storyline that you keep current and you keep people invested and they understand it because there weren't so many breaks. And dare I say it, if Swerve and Adam Page had a week in, week out type of angle that was happening all the time, where they didn't go off on the side quest here and there, dare I say it, the match would have been better. It would have seemed tighter, but still there was so much dead air between things. Punk and Drew didn't have any of that. Like you said, the toolbox we'll get into, that was something. The Claymore onto the steps, that was something. The suplex, like Michael Elgin style or Nigel McGuinness style from there through the tables. What they did was they had action, and then when it was dead, it was because there were double downs or because they had the other guy down and they were setting something up. It just felt like always something was going on, and when nothing was going on, it was because they were both hurt. That's what I got out of it. The bracelet thing, doing the thing instead of the thumbtacks, they had the bracelet pieces. That was really nice. That these little touches, as you would say, the minutia of everything, Philly accent, the minutia of everything. It just felt like everything had a purpose. Everything meant something. Even the steps, it was paired with his finish, going for the finish and missing the finish. Um, what else? The Claymore on the floor, not a pinfall. Can't beat him out there, but you got your finish in. And guess what? The reason why you got the finish in there, I knew as a worker, he's going to miss it and it's going to be something kind of ultra violent. That was all very tight. Um, the blood, that surprised me. Like WWE, that's where they get it. Like, even though Drew was hard way, they got it and said, okay, this would be the part, this would be the match, this would be the pay-per-view where we can have blood. AEW does it so much now that it doesn't mean anything. So it was infinitely better. But I'll tell you this, I blame Tony Khan, whoever's in charge of creative, whoever dropped the ball and tried to pick the ball back up a year later to make Swerve and Page work. And dare I say too, dude, why do we have Wembley all in, right? And then all out before we even have a chance to digest what happened at Wembley? That does the talent a disservice for them putting their bodies on the line.
People within the company have the same problem. It's like, if you can't remember it in the company, how's the fan supposed to remember this?
That just hurts me from a talent perspective because you want to do work that people remember. You want to have moments. You want to have your catchphrases get over. You want to sell T-shirts. You want to be in video games. You want to have action figures. You want your body and the sacrifices that you're making, which we all come out of this thing, not what we went into it. So you want at least some monetary compensation or memorable moments that you're able to work conventions for the next 20 to 30 years. And unfortunately, because of creative, dude, I had to go back and remember. I'm not even kidding. When you mentioned the cinder block, the needle, the chair shot to me before the show, I had to go watch it. I forgot. When you told me Brian, the thing that he lost the title to Brian Danielson, I forgot he was the champion. That's not because I'm an AEW hater or any of that stuff. That's because it all runs together and nothing means anything anymore. You need to battle that even even if you have the greatest product. WWE, even if I thought they were the greatest product. They're fighting an uphill battle of short attention span, short-term memory, and people that just don't care, desensitized. You have to battle all that. So my heart goes out to Page, Swerve, and everybody. And on the same show, you got Brian Danielson being suffocated, which should stand alone on the show. I'm sorry. I just think it's a disservice to the talent.
I've got a few different notes I'm going to bring up to you. There's one thing that bugged me straight away with CM Punk and Drew McIntyre, and you might know what I'm going to say. They both wore pretty much the same gear. They were both in black trunks. Is that something as a talent that you were cognizant of? You'd know who your opponent was and you'd try and color yourself differently, I guess.
Yeah, that was a weird one. I agree with that. I mean, you're obviously not going to mistake one for the other, but why they both wore black. And now here's the thing. Here's a little trick for any potential. This is my coaching thing for free out there. When I wrestled Abyss in that match with the taser, you noticed I bled in the match, right?
Mhm.
What color scrubs was I wearing?
Whites.
If you're going to bleed, wear white. It's easy as that. Because even if the blood dries off or doesn't get the Drew McIntyre hardway stream, the trunks, the outfit, everything, the boots, the knee pads will show the blood even when it's gone. That's a very important thing. If I were Punk, I would have wore white. Because obviously you wipe the blood off and you just wipe it on your trunks. There you got blood on your trunks, just like that.
How did you feel? This is once again comparing both matches. How did you feel both pairs of guys worked with the cell/cage?
Not quite enough. I felt like the cage wasn't used as much in either match that it should have been. It did. The cage is the main weapon. Now they used it to climb, Swerve and Page used it to climb up, and everybody uses it to climb and do whatever. But I really did feel like Taker and Shawn had the perfect Hell in a Cell match, where Taker was bouncing Shawn off the cage, both inside and outside the cage. These are things where they did use it, but we're in 2024. I feel like a cage match doesn't have the same amount of danger, nor what it's really used for is to keep other people out as well or keep people in. So I would have loved to have seen Drew try to kick the cage door open to get away from Punk and kind of show his ass a little bit. I would have loved to have seen really bouncing people off at all four corners of the cage or sides of the cage. I would have loved to have seen the Brock Lesnar Roman Reigns spot where the cage collapses. You know, use the cage, show the danger, and show how you guys hate each other so much that you almost want to put each other through the cage. That would have been good. So I don't think I don't think it was in an egregious level of leaving it out. But if you're in a cage, use the cage. It's like their strap match. They had a strap match. What did they use? They used the strap. That's what was missing in my estimation.
Something that I enjoyed very much from the Punk and Drew cage match was I, I watched it this morning. I've already forgotten. I can't remember. I think they both hit each other with their respective finishes, and they both rolled out of the ring at one point. Instead, there was a finisher kick out towards the very end, but in the meat of the match, they both hit a finisher and they both couldn't get the pin because the other had rolled out. Whether it's by design or by accident, I mean, obviously, it's by design, but in the meat of the story, were they just unlucky? And there's a story I heard, and I can't remember who it was. It might have been Mr. Wrestling 2 or something like that. Someone had like a knee lift as a finisher. And there was a match against whoever it was, Bobby Eaton or whoever, I don't know. This is a terrible retelling of the story, I understand. Hit the knee lift like 6 different times in the match. The first one bumps him straight out the middle ropes. Damn, I nearly got him, but if only he just hadn't done that, I would have won the match. Then the second time, he's too close to the ropes. And then the third time, someone just gets in the way. And different creative ways of not being able to get the pin, yet protecting their finishes, I thought was very creative.
No, I agree with that. And I don't leave out when Drew hit him with the Claymore on the floor and obviously couldn't get him in the ring to pin him in time. They really did protect their finishes. That was really good. Um, Also, they were both smart enough to know we're the first match. So obviously the last match is probably going to have people getting kickouts of finishes. So why would we do it? It's kind of, if you're going to have a cage match, at least employ some psychology to be in the first match on the show. And they did their best, even though they needed to, in a way, for a first match, do too much. But they needed to be apply the rules, but still be the exception at the same time.
Something that we've mentioned recently. So do you remember when we were talking about NXT face? Yeah. And the other thing we were talking about at the same time is that no one seems to wrestle exhausted. Throughout this as you using the hand graph of from fresh to absolutely exhausted. And I think at the time I used the example of like MJF and Will Ospreay. And, they were exhausted, then they were fresh again, and then they were exhausted and fresh again. Whereas CM Punk and Drew McIntyre, they were tired and tired and tired. You could see it. They built up through it. Bret Hart style, which I hugely appreciated. They just got more exhausted. Not just selling, but just more exhausted throughout. They weren't just, bing, I'm fresh again, at the 25-minute mark.
Yeah, and you could shoot exhausted, like really exhausted. That's why I can't understand people are 20 minutes in and they're still fresh. Brett had a thing. It's a tell, but a good tell. You ever notice when Brett he would throw punches and it almost like he'd inhale big things of oxygen and then blow the oxygen out when he would punch. But during the match, Brett had a way of moving and walking in his face. It was almost like you could see him trying to get oxygen into his body. You ever notice what he would puff out his shoulder? He was probably really blown up, by the way, but such a really small thing that would tell you, dude, this match is, we're heading into the deep water. Somebody's got to win. Dude, it's such an unappreciated, unnoticed detail, but also one that the talent, you literally only have to act like you really feel. That's the amazing part. That's why it feels real. Do you tell me a wrestler, and I'm pretty well known for my cardio, you tell me a wrestler that's not tired in a pay-per-view match situation, especially in a cage, 15, 20 minutes in, you're not feeling it. Come on. Come on, man.
CM Punk ends up winning clean. Well, as clean as you can be in Hell in a Cell. He had a chain around his knee, but he hits his finisher, GTS, pins him, and sort of blows off the feud once and for all. He is, I don't know where he's going to be moving on to next. He was on Raw and almost pretty much intimated that he was going to go away for a little while, which he may well do. I mean, WWE aren't hurting for stars at the moment, it must be said. Going back to Adam Page, Swerve Strickland, and we didn't mention the finish of that match. As we've already sort of established in at least our minds, we weren't quite sure who was the babyface, who was the heel. But Adam Page won that match decisively. There's one more thing, actually, I want to say as well, is before we get to them, because I completely forgot to mention this. The referee, near the beginning, stopped Adam Page from using the chair. And then he cost Adam Page the advantage when Swerve Strickland interfered, and then Swerve took the chair and started beating Adam Page mercilessly, and the referee did nothing. Then the referee did nothing about any of the weapons, including the chair at the end, until he, waved off the match. Why would you tell a referee to do that, interfere so early on in a match?
Well, this theory runs in with my Hulk Hogan Stargate theory. I would say that I was waiting till you drank to bring that one out. But this is obviously the Nevada State Athletic Commission hired this referee for a boxing match, and this is the guy. It didn't go to the judges. It couldn't go to the judges. If you're a boxing fan, you know how rigged those things can be. Yeah, I was like, this is the most biased referee I've ever seen in my life. Like, man, what did Swerve do to him? And like I said, Swerve came off like a babyface. So now we have a Danny Davis heel type referee. If you're old enough to remember that one,
Yeah.
the teaming, it's 2-on-1 at that. What is going on?
That was a baffling one to be. Sorry, the point I was going to make beforehand is that we didn't know if Adam Page or Swerve Strickland, who was the babyface, who was the heel. Shades of grey, that kind of thing. But then Adam Page wins super clean. You know, he beats him down with, well, I mean,
We didn't see it. We didn't see the move. We didn't see it.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
We didn't get to see it.
Assume a chair shot happened.
We got to see the chair shot from the people that paid the least amount of money for their tickets.
With that being said, everyone saw it on Twitter until Don Stevens took all the videos down. But there was a far better shot all on social media. But the people who paid for it live, at least at first instance, had to watch it, as you say, from Rose X.
Why would they do that, dude? Why would they do that?
Like insurance, maybe? They thought, not to, we want to have it far away in case it goes terribly wrong. And
as compared to the other spots that you had the super close up. Yeah, we don't want to. Yeah. Let's get a close up and a needle in the mouth. But man, we can't deal with like chair shots. Can't show that.
Having said that, any comparing the matches, anything else that I've not brought up that you want to mention now?
No, I just can't say it enough, man. I mean, we're laughing and doing whatever with the Swerve Page thing, but these guys have to still be feeling this. They didn't, it's such an incredibly dangerous match just when you use the cage. But introducing all this stuff, I just feel like they didn't get enough out of it to elevate themselves. And that's the point of these type of matches. If you're going to do it, you need to be elevated. There needs to be a reward from a character perspective or even a talent perspective that the company will take care of you, elevate you, put you in a spot because you sacrificed your body. And I don't feel like this accomplished any of that for either one of these guys.
On that basis, there was something we left out of the Hell in a Cell, and it was the toolbox shot that CM Punk dropped, legitimately, I suspect, dropped Drew McIntyre with. Now, we do have footage of this. We've both seen this. We've both seen this several times. We're going to watch it together once again. We can't quite figure out how the hard way happened, to the point that there was a gash in Drew McIntyre's head that required 16 staples to close up again. And, once again, the referee, at least the referee wasn't so biased as in the AEW match. The referee wiped Drew McIntyre's eyes. I suspect that was a production call because the camera, I think, went away slightly and then a towel was introduced just to wipe from the eyes and all the fans booed. And then the second time, the referee tried to wipe the blood from Drew's eyes and then Drew threw the towel away to a big cheer as well.
But at least they got the initial stream of blood from after the toolbox where he was just you showed it. And it was a lot of blood within 5 seconds. He had that much blood down his face. Wow.
It was the Crimson Mask.
It was. Katie Barr at the door, man.
Then? So how did this go so right / so wrong?
Well, I have the footage right here. We're going to go slow through this and see. Now, this spot here, by the way, is if you watch the match from episode 15, it's either a chair, a garbage can lid, or other objects that are actually more flat than a toolbox in a way. So, with PJ and myself, if you refer to episode 15, I was choking him with a strap, hanging him. He got the garbage can lid and did that, kind of like a pan, just kind of try to get off me type thing. Punk, the same thing. Out here, and we're going to go to the footage here. You could see Drew's reaching over the middle, which is really, you gotta lean over the middle. If you lean over the top, like if he leaned over the top here, Punk wouldn't be, then he would get the corner of the toolbox. But Drew goes through the middle here, Punk is right here, and what's gonna happen is Punk, as he's leaned over, is going to throw the toolbox up into Drew. Now, thank God he didn't hit him in the face. That would have been bad, like a Joey Mercury type of split open type thing. So, as we look right here, I'm gonna go frame by frame. Yeah, this is weird because he's hitting them. We thought at first it was these latches right here on the front of the toolbox. It's not. It's the bottom of the toolbox. So, and he did not. I mean, there's guys that have gashed themselves and gigged themselves. Drew covered with the hand like this, but he didn't gig himself to that degree. I don't think so, at least. Here's all I can think of, James, as I'm looking at it. He hits him with the toolbox, and then the toolbox comes down towards Punk. So I'm wondering if there was a lip of metal or a little, when you powder coat something and there's a little bit of a speck left over the metal. I think that gashed him. That little part. He hit him flat, boom, then the toolbox comes down. And Drew on that part grabs at his head. Do you see that now? I think on the bottom, there was this, it's a freak accident. On the bottom, there was literally just an extra bit of metal, like a shaving or something that when they powder coated it, it was like a little razor blade or like a round speck. And that right there, as it came down, that gashed Drew. That's my guess. Yeah.
So we were trying to come up with theories. I can't get the footage. I can't find it. I've got it on my.
I got to watch the show. You got to
Oh,
watch the show then.
Oh, yeah, I'll rewatch it. Well, we were trying to think like I know I'm using the wrong word, but we thought it was like the knurling, like the embossed bits of the toolbox.
Like a manhole cover plate type of pattern. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. But if you look further on in the footage where CM Punk after he hits Drew, he lifts up the box and it looks smooth all the way under. And of course, it's got to be smooth because it's got to be sat on flat surfaces. You don't want to be rocking it back and forth. What else did we think? We thought maybe hitting the corner, but it looks pretty flat. I mean, it's a toolbox. Maybe a tool had dug through the base slightly.
Now, my guess is if Drew is gashed like this, which is my guess, because the blood ran straight. If he was gashed this way, it would kind of be kind of streamed across the side and then down. Drew's face is literally, it's a straight down the face to the chest thing. I'm looking at this more and more. And Chris, you can go back and forth between us. I'm playing it real slow. He hits him completely flat. But then when Punk comes down like that, it gets him. That's my guess.
Yeah. For the wound itself, as I say, 16 staples to close, and also it's almost exactly where your parting is in your hair. It's like right in the center, direct in the middle as well. I mean, it's a terrible cut.
I have a freeze frame it right here. The center of his head, top of his head here, goes through the ropes. And I'm telling you, flat right there. That's the part that gashes him. It's got to be, dude. He didn't hit him hard enough to split him. You know what I mean? It feels more like this now that I'm looking at it for like the 20th time. That's how it happened. Everybody, everybody can leave a comment. You go back and watch it frame by frame. But I believe something was on the bottom of the toolbox that cut him open. Different than the cane shot. Give a little segue. That cane shot, it was no mystery how I got the staples all the way around like I was wearing a beret. My own head is a beret. That said, hello, everybody.
Like a comb over.
Yeah. Good luck, everybody.
Well, my next question was: have you ever been hit hard and been hard weighed during a match?
Many, many times. Many, many times. Nothing like the Dreamer one from the Singapore Cane match. But man, and I knew right away that the thing that's weird is Drew probably knew, but he didn't. You don't know how bad it is because the area goes numb right away. And you don't know. And plus, I'll tell you a funny story. Were we going to break down and analyze the actual Singapore Cane shot? Do you want to do that now?
Do you want to do that at the end or?
We'll do it at the end, and I'll tell
Yeah,
the
okay.
story. I'll tell the story because Drew might have not known, and then when he got to the back, like, his fingers went into his brain, and he's like, "Oh, wait, I got staples. I gotta get this taken care of." 'Cause your adrenaline, and you're gonna talk about bleeding. Drew's adrenaline made that stream much more. Your blood's pumping, your heart's pumping. You get in a very dangerous territory of losing a lot of blood because you're so excited. Then your blood pressure, then I don't know what can happen. You can turn around and your blood pressure can completely drop. That's very dangerous.
With that being said, does blood flow react differently when it's hard way versus blade?
I mean, it all depends. I mean, when you're hard weighed, usually it's not a clean kind of razor blade thin cut. When like Drew's hard, if you're hard weighed more times than not, unless you're in your eye or whatever, your face, more times than not on the head, you're getting staples, which means it's opened up, it's jagged, it's not a clean this, or some guys back in the day would do this up and down. But there's still an inherent danger of doing this because you have veins up in your you cut too deep, you pretty much cut a vein or an artery, and that's you've seen instances in the old school days where blood was spurting out. That's usually because you hit something. So, it's not different. I know guys used to do tricks like with the double dog collar match back in 1995. I remember I was backstage because Gary beat me to the back, right? And then it was my first time ever doing it. And I did it once, twice, want to do it a third time. And Paul comes up and goes, "Stop. You're bleeding. Stop." Because I was like, had no idea. I was just going to keep doing that. And that was probably my worst gig job that I ever did. Oh, the iPad technical difficulties. Don't put the screen up, Chris. Save that sparingly. So, but when I went out there to bleed like that, I had taken a couple aspirin, and I don't drink, but I drank a beer to thin my blood out. That's like an old school. I don't know if it really worked. Could be a placebo effect, but I was bleeding plenty in that double dog collar match. Now with the hard way with Dreamer, there was no blood. It was the finish anyway with the cane. There was no blood until I'll tell the story, until I got to the back, didn't realize it, and then said, "Oh, wait a minute, I have a flap." And now, holy God, I'm in the shower and it looks like a scene from Psycho. Blood everywhere. Like the shower stream was bouncing the blood off all the walls. And, and I was like, I walked out, I think a Chuck Plumbo or somebody was getting in the shower, and I said, "Good luck, everybody." And just left.
I've got a couple more things about hard way, so we're going to get into the blading. Clotting. Do they clot differently?
Well, obviously, if you're split like Drew or myself with the cane, you got to get stapled up. You got to get treatment done with the blading. It depends on how good you are at doing it, where you're blading at. But you can stop the bleeding pretty good. But obviously, like I said, if you hit a vein or an artery, you're going to the hospital getting stitches. Oh, I'm sorry, local medical facility.
Yes, for goodness sake, we can't have a hospital here. What was the theory about that? This is one of the Vince McMahon directors where I think if he said hospital, he was worried that fans would call the local hospitals trying to find information.
Yeah, I think that's where it is. But the local medical facility was just like, hey, if you got wrestling fans that want to find the boys if they're in a hospital, they're going to find them. Urgent care, local medical complex, whatever it might be. But that was always funny. But Vince was always, you got to give Vince credit at least. He was always willing to kind of change the trigger words or the marketing words. I'm sorry, local medical facility, WWE Universe. I give him credit for trying to get away from fans and this and that. There was even one point where JR in a talent meeting was telling us that Vince, this was so funny. Vince wanted us to start calling the fans consumers because fans was insulting.
Why?
Hey, you don't think consumers is
Yeah, I mean, how faceless do you want to make your fans?
yeah, that was the original pitch for people to become NPCs, I guess.
Oh my god. Okay, and oh yeah. Yes.
Ha ha,
Oh,
ha ha.
that's a lovely gaming reference.
Uh, who's the best at doing hard ways without just killing you?
Terry Funk.
Oh really?
Terry Funk
Was he
with
doing the knuckle thing?
the knuckle thing on your eyebrow. Yeah, that was in the old days, that was the way a lot of guys, because this cartilage or soft tissue could be busted open very easily. Of course, you're still getting busted open hard way and probably need stitches or something. Sabu, I know you're gonna get to the Sabu if you're talking about hard way and color. All the rumors about Sabu super gluing every cut is true. All the rumors about Sabu tearing his bicep in the barbed wire match and then just taping it up during the match, 100% true. Sabu is beyond a real one. I will say that. Super nice guy, too.
No, do you know what? He's actually, because I know he hates doing interviews, but I think he trusts me enough now that I can get him through, and make it not too boring for him. But I know he just doesn't like doing the talking. But no, I hung out with him for hours.
Do I tell you, do we wait till the new ECW episode and I give my thoughts on that? Because I think that's a whole episode within itself. Because I have one of the funniest Sabu stories. Because believe it or not, here's a car ride for you. Myself driving, Sabu, and Kelly Kelly.
Huh.
So you want to save that for the full episode?
That's a good teaser. That's a good teaser. We need to do.
Oh, here we go. Hey, drink every time we say this. When are we going to do this?
In a future episode.
We got our quota in.
We will. We need to do gaming. We need to do WWE.
Action figures, everything.
Victoria, we haven't done anything. I'm sure someone was complaining at us once. I was like, oh, how long till they run out of stuff to do? It's like, never.
You haven't seen James's notes.
Jeez. Yeah, no, you haven't seen the notes. Right, we're going to talk about, I don't know if we're going to finish off on this or we'll have time to do anything else, because quite frankly, this is already going to be a 3-hour episode as it is. But I watched to, because we were talking about Drew McIntyre, 16 staples and the hard way, but then I thought it'd be a nice thing to finish this episode on and talk about a staple of, well, not a staple, a blade, more like, of professional wrestling. And it is, of course, getting colour, getting juice, whatever you like to call it. You've bled once or twice in your career, Stevie, and sometimes you even did it on purpose.
Yeah, sometimes. Yeah, yeah. The ratio of hard way to me volunteering myself is very, very lopsided. Not in my favor.
Yeah, I even screen grabbed you once, and it was straight after when Chris Masters did the nose busting Polish hammer kind of thing. It's like, oh god. So I was wondering what the ratio was, 10-1.
Pretty close. Pretty close. The odds of me doing it myself as far as getting color are like the odds of the Jaguars winning the Super Bowl, if you're a football fan. Sorry, I'm not. That's not a slight on Tony Khan, by the way. Everybody thinks I'm making fun of him.
Speaking of which, I've just bought a Jaguar. It's my first nice car in my entire life.
Hopefully, this show gets up to that income stream. Thank you very much, James.
Oh yeah, no worries. But it's the reason I was wanted. So is I've got a Jag, because you've got to say it like that. But I like having a Jag. Anyway,
I never knew somebody in their 20s could go through a midlife crisis. Congratulations.
Who's in their 20s?
Oh, I thought that was you.
Oh no, apparently I'm either a sort of like overgrown fetus, or which I basically am. I look young for my age.
I'm the 53-year-old guy playing video games, so there.
Of Christ, you look young for your age, for God's sake. You're fit as a fiddle. Someone, I did read this comment once, and someone wrote in and said that you looked like how Shawn Michaels hoped he'd looked at your age.
Oh, that's me. That's me. Did you pin that comment? No.
You'll have to find it and pin it yourself.
I 2 episodes or 2 clips. I've pinned the person. The best one was Stevie hasn't worn sleeves since the right to censor. I pinned that comment. So if you do a friendly roasting of me, we will try to pin the comment for the best one.
There we go. We'll fight over who can pin it first. You'll win though, because I never read the comments, or I rarely anyway. Anyway, for the finisher, we might not do a false finish. This might be the finisher to end the show on. So as I say, blading, etc. I did the intro. Having said all what I said before, how long were you in the business before you discovered the art of blading or the razor blades? When did you first discover that this was even a thing?
Now, even as retired, I still haven't discovered the art of how to do it properly. So I will say if I was the ECW wrestler everybody thought ECW wrestlers were, I would have the Dusty Rhodes or Abbey roadmap because I do not do it very well. The first time I discovered the secret, like they bleed that way, was when I was on TV with ECW. The first time I ever gigged was the double dog collar match. And I was terrified. That's what the Paul, stop, because I had no idea what I was doing. Um, I got hard weighed many, many times after that and before that with Raven and the Pit Bulls and doing things with Luna and Dramer. Always got hard weight on top of the head or the back, stuff like that. The next time I remember really doing it, oh, the cage match where I was locked in a cage with Terry Gordy. It was called Ultimate Jeopardy. So it was Dreamer, Gordy, I forget who else, and it was me, Raven, and Brian Lee. If I got pinned, Raven lost the world title. It was really cool concept. But I started in the Eagle's Nest. Somebody started outside the ring, somebody started in the ring. Gordy came to get me, busted me open on the Eagle's Nest, and I remember this shot, really awesome shot by production. I was on the cage, Gordy was beating me, and I was kind of hanging onto the cage, and I was like this, and they just zoomed into my face, just pouring blood. And the funny part was, I had a picture of me doing the karate chops on an airbrush shirt, and my blood got onto the character. So it was like a weird kind of inception of bleeding. The airbrush character had blood on its face too. So that was the next time. That was 1996. Then after that, I'd have to say probably I really didn't get color myself until Victory Road, where I got the taser and got color against Abyss. Since that time, not really ever at all, except hard way. I've gotten hard way. And when PJ hit me with the beer bottle from episode 15, that, even though it was candy glass, that hard weighed me, but not enough to get staples. It just like little like holes in my head that bled, but very few times. See, this is also as a worker, not as an athlete, not as a wrestler, as a worker, James and everybody out there. You need to know when to do it, and more importantly, when not to do it. If it doesn't make sense, why do it just to do it? If it's just a cool spot, why are you gonna leave a scar on your head or your arm or anywhere else? Unless it's a meaningful moment, finish, you get hard weight, you can't help it. But do you get what I mean? The first thing you should ask whenever you say, or someone comes to you and says, hey, we want you to get color. You have to do the Raven scientific method and use every single thought to try to disprove why it makes sense. And then if it makes sense after all that, you go, okay, that's cool. But if, spots are one thing, but when you're cutting yourself, you want to do that with the most amount of meaning as possible. So, like I said, hard way you can't help. But then again, if you get hard way like Drew did, make it count. And he did.
Who showed you how to do it the first time? In fact, before I ask you that, who suggested blading the first time? Was it Paul? Was it Raven? Was it someone else?
Raven. And he showed me how to do the thing with the wrist tape and all that stuff and everything. He was the one, because I was not good at it. He was the one that developed the spot of basically Gary's going to run. I remember the double dog car. I'm sorry. Buell cut a promo saying I broke my arm and I couldn't compete. So it was going to be like Pitbull number 2 against Raven or a handicap match, 2 out of 3 falls. Gary ran to the back to get me, and I came out bleeding already. So it was kind of cool that way. That was, and Joey Styles is like, I saw him in the back. His arm is fine. He's a coward or whatever word. He didn't use coward, but basically that's the way the setup was. That I was such a coward. I didn't even want to come out for the match. So they had to go back and get me. So, but Raven knew that I could not cover it up properly, that I could not do it efficiently. So he came up with that spot.
So how did the first time go? So did you do it yourself or did someone offer to do it for you?
I did it myself and probably should have offered, I took somebody's offer to do it. I know there's been stories about referees gigging wrestlers and people in the back. Dude, you have to have an incredible amount of trust at that point. I didn't even trust myself, much less anybody else. And I was just getting kind of smartened up to the fact that the boys play very, very, how should I say, sick ribs on each other at times. And to me, I thought somebody doing this would be funny to some people in the locker room. So I did it myself. But I guarantee you, they probably wouldn't have did as bad of a job as I did. I think I still have the two little scars like here and here, but they're so deep.
Oh, so you just went in way too deep then essentially. Did you like going with the corner?
I did. I didn't do a cross straight. I did angled. Don't ask me why. Ha ha.
Right, so did no one actually tell you to like not do it that way? Or did you just guess? Were you just left to your own devices?
Well, Raven told me definitely not to do the roadmap. You see, I could. Here's the thing: you're in a match. You're so nervous. You know you got to go out there and pull probably 30 or 40 total. You know you're getting thrown through a table. You know that you're going to be on Raven's shoulders and get choke slammed off the top rope by 911, who does it for real. So think about how nervous I was to where, listen, I didn't have this mirrorless camera to show me what level is. So, so I'm like this. So to me, this was level.
Well, if you were in the back, why don't you just like get a mirror and do it?
Do you know the budget of ECW? You think we had a mirror somewhere back
Yeah,
there?
I'm sorry. Yeah, no, I'm sorry. I know you didn't have facilities. I should
Good Lord, half the time we didn't have a curtain to go through.
Where's the best place on the head to cut? Okay, let's pretend you're not Viano 3 or Dusty Rhodes or Abdullah the Butcher or someone like that, who or New Jack for goodness sake. But is it more in the center and straight across, like where there's like a crease in the head, or is it more hairline that's better?
My opinion, because I do have more in this spot after I did that initial one, is right up here towards the hairline. Because when your hair's down, it's going to flow further. If you go here, this part here will not be bloody. See what I mean? The higher you go here, without cutting your hair, obviously, higher on the forehead, the hairline will also flow more down this way. And also, when you lay down, it's going to flow into your hair better. That's just my guess. But what I would suggest is, by the way, in 2024, do we even need blood? That's a question for everybody in the comments.
I like blood.
Are we so desensitized that blood doesn't make a difference?
No, I think for the Hell in a Cell it really worked because it was the end, because it was a blood feud. It was the end of the feud. That's when blood. Obviously, that's when if blood is going to be used, unless it's an angle to build to the crescendo, then that's really when it should be used. I've never really had a problem with blood, but I understand a lot of people do, and I suspect more women than men have problems seeing blood or would find it more distasteful. I figure as well.
It's from a selfish perspective. Say, okay. By the way, they should have said these guys are never going to wrestle again. I don't think they ever put that out there. The last time they were going to wrestle each other, that would have made it much more special. Here's the way I look at it too. Say in my case, at 53, I'm going to go back and I'm going to wrestle. Now, number one, I'm going to make sure it's a good storyline. I'll make sure it has a lot to it. I'm coming back. I know I'm not going to come out of it the same I went into it, especially at my age. If it was a heel that a heel that I was always fighting from underneath, much like PJ was with me in that episode 15 breakdown. And it was the only match I was coming back for. And I was literally in a rocky situation. I'm an underdog. I don't have much of a chance. The blood will emphasize that even more, that I am so far down. I'm so far underneath. I'm such an underdog and I'm in so much peril that I need the fans to help give me the energy and the motivation to continue and hopefully win this match. That makes sense. Do you see what I mean? The sense of urgency, the one off, I'm kind of out of my element because I haven't been in the ring for so long and I get busted open. I'm in some serious jeopardy. I'm in trouble. That makes sense.
One more as far as cutting goes. I suspect you don't want to do it in the middle of the forehead because there is a vein running straight to the top. So I suspect either side is optimal.
Either side or not too deep. I went across this way and did go through the center in that Victory Road match, and you saw it come down. Now, once again, it could be a placebo. I took a couple aspirin. I drank one beer, and that was it. The bad part is for me that I'm very much a lightweight. My wife will tell you I can have one of those White Claws or whatever and be buzzed off it. So drink, yeah, of course. What are you talking about, man? Dude,
Have what?
if I do that Hulk Hogan beer test, which I still have that 6-pack, if I do it, chances are if I have to drink the whole beer, I will be buzzed during the show. Then the real truth will come out.
Is it a sad state of affairs that I could have all 6 and you probably wouldn't know the difference?
Oh, told you I was lightweight.
Well, do you know what? I had to train myself to be able to drink. And trust, I got the worst advice once. This was years ago from my old sensei, I guess. And I said, "Man, I just can't drink very much, because everyone's out partying all the time." And his advice was, drink 3/4 of a bottle of wine every night. I was like, "Wow, what great advice!"
Was he a
What did it bring to you?
was he a former professional wrestler?
Well, he was a lot of things. I'll tell you. I'll tell you about that off air. Anyway, that's a story in itself. Back to the blading. Did you disinfect afterwards, or did you have the wrestler mentality and just have a quick rinse in the shower?
Until WWE, probably a quick rinse in the shower, but we didn't have showers at ECW, so we would just go to there was lots of times at the Travel Lodge or whatever restaurant or Pat Steaks, Gino Steaks, wherever you went, where the boys would still be in their gear, bloodied, ordering a cheesesteak or going to the bar.
Isn't that just like more of a thing that so many of the ECW wrestlers just wrestled in their clothes anyway?
Yeah, a lot of guys did. Well, my clothes, I wouldn't walk around with my clothes or else I'd be in a lot of trouble.
Yeah. Oh, with the belly? Yeah, I guess so. Uh, now, now we've seen like certain ones, like like Eddie Guerrero, or I wrote another example down. Who are some of the blade jobs that have gone really bad? Oh, Bill Alfonso, for goodness' sake! How could I forget? Uh, yeah, with you personally watching, I know of the 3 times that you've mentioned that you've done it. None of them went too bad. It went broadly fine, I guess. But from what you've seen personally, not on TV, can you think of any that went really, really wrong and why they went wrong as far as cutting?
Man, I can't think. The only thing that really stands out as the worst blade job ever was New Jack on Mass Transit.
Yep.
No, but I'm just saying, if you want to talk about like the sickest, like someone getting their forehead cut and bleeding, that was the worst I've ever seen. The Eddie Guerrero one was that was almost a sprouter, that it came out. That was a really bad one. Who else? Vince's blade jobs were pretty legit against Hulk Hogan. That was the one where he came up like the devil over the apron. If we only knew. Shawn Michaels, he bled against, I believe, right? Oh, yeah, was that the Shawn where he left on the stretcher and did the middle finger?
I can't remember. I know there was one. I know there was one that Vince took a ladder to the head, and Vince didn't even put his hand up. He just stood there and just watched the ladder come towards his head and just took it and went down.
Well, because Vince had that thing if I can do it, if I do it, then you can do it. But it doesn't mean it should be done at all in the same vein. And that ladder spot was, yeah, that was Shawn WrestleMania 22 because 21 was Shawn versus Kurt Angle. Awesome match.
Where do other wrestlers hide their blades? I've written down some potential examples, but what are the most usual and what are the most unusual?
Most usual is the wrist tape. Other most usual is the ref passing you the blade. Some would have it under the ring apron. The most unusual, and I tried to do it because I had great respect for him and he was trying to teach me the whole way of doing it. Terry Funk would have me put the blade in my mouth under my tongue. And that's what he would do.
Hey.
That was the old way of doing it. Because
thought you were gonna say
because they didn't even want people seeing him reach for the wrist tape. It would just be boom and put it back in his mouth and then either spit it out under the ring or something like that. Or sometimes he said people would swallow him.
Okay, right. So when I've heard that before, keeping it in the mouth, but I always imagined it was like in the cheek. You just close your mouth. But he actually kept it under his tongue.
I've heard that story too, but when he was trying to get me to do it, it was under the tongue. And there were house shows. And the funny part was there was a couple of house shows where I was supposed to get color, but I would say something and the blade would like I'm like talking and I have like my tongue just or I always had some kind of issue with my tongue coming out or whatever. So I'd be like the blade would just come out. So poor Terry, he'd be like, Stevie, you stupid son of a bitch. What are you doing? I lost the blade, Terry. What are you don't let me cut a promo before I'm supposed to, like, everybody, we're taking over.
Did you at least take like the Gillette handle out first?
No, we didn't put the whole razor in our mouth. Come on, dude. We tape up the little thing from the actual razor thing.
You saw through me there. You saw through me.
Now today, you have to literally tell the kids, take the razor in, because then they would be like, oh.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I accidentally bought a Gillette razor that had a battery in it and it vibrated. So imagine if you turn that, trying to do whatever you got to do. Who are the best wrestlers at blading and not making it obvious?
Terry Funk. Terry Funk. I think Abdullah would do the thing where he would, like, you hit him, he'd do that. You know what I mean? That's a big trope of wrestlers. If you hit me, I just start doing. You ever see them do that as a joke?
Oh yeah. Oh, well, and just pretend.
Pretend like, oh, you hit me. Like, and sometimes in the ring they would do it, and I'd be like, come on. I mean, you're making it more of a joke than it needs to be.
I was going to say, do you know who did that once in a match? And it was on Raw, and I remember this. Goldust. He was the one where he was pretending to be his dad, Dusty Rhodes. He was doing the artist.
He was like telling Brad, it was against Bradshaw, and he goes, "You better bump for me, you big son of a bitch!" Right?
Yeah, that's the one. He does it in the same match where he punches him, and then he just turns around and then, but no one caught it
because that's what Dusty would do. So it's like it was inside, but it was an accurate impersonation. Yeah, that was funny. Where
I wrote down.
If Bradshaw was beating him up, he rolled out of the ring, grabbed the mic, and said, "You better start bumping your ass off." It's so fun.
That was such a win of a segment. I love that segment, man. Who were the worst? I've written down Lou Albano. He may be the unquestioned Lord and champion of most obvious cutting himself, but who else?
I think there was an era in AEW where it was really bad, where it was caught to the point where they would put it up all the time. I think there was a Jericho one. Dude, it's so tough to do. The cameraman has to literally, like in my match with Abyss at Victory Road, and you know how, and people probably know by this point, how OCD I am about the details. I went to the camera people, I went to the truck, and I said, please, I know you guys know, but when he rams me into the steps, he's going to do it over and over again. And then there's going to be a big one where I take a back bump. When I do that, please, please, please shoot towards Abyss, close up and away from me, like you're back to me. So, and then if you could turn and zoom in on me after I turn over and I look at you. They did it. You just don't want to leave anything to chance because how many times, and it's not Jericho's fault or anybody else, but you cut to the guy that did the violence that made you bleed. Give me 5 to 10 seconds. That's all I need. But how many times in the camera people catch everybody bleeding?
Punk. In AEW, I think they caught Punk.
They did. They totally, dude, in AEW was like, I guess they bet how many times can we catch them bleeding? Whoever catches them the most wins this pile of money because it seemed like, oh, they're bleeding. Get it. Get it. Cut the camera 3. They're bleeding.
I had Larry Zbyszko on about, I don't know, 6-8 months ago. I can't remember, roughly around that time. And I remember rewatching, the time he turns on Bruno, the really famous one. It's Allentown or one of those tapings. And Bruno gigged so obviously, he might as well have had an exploding scoreboard behind him. But the thing is, we're talking back in 1980.
You got to stop right there. What's this metaphor of the exploding scoreboard? I don't know why I'm going to be laughing all week about that. What is an exploding scoreboard? Please tell me.
Oh, for God's sake, like sports events, then the fireworks go out, touchdown.
Oh, with the Titantron, they have it up on the Titantron.
Honestly, I mean, it's bad enough with the wig on his head. You might as well, and then you've got him to go, woo! It was so obvious.
Hey, he had some fake cane hair going for a little bit, Bruno. It was.
I know, but he almost had the Marge Simpson starter kick.
Oh, here's what I wanted to say. Fake cane was Sideshow Bob. That was the hair.
Oh, was he? I don't know. I'm sticking with Paul Stanley. Although I did see someone. I actually watched. I read the Wrestle Crap write up of it, and they said the guy from Winger.
Well, that's true. Yeah, that's true. Kip Winger, I think his name was. Hey, by the way, side note, I told Sean Careless. He puts over the show. He says he's a big fan. Sean, I'm looking right at you. Sorry, Vince, I'm looking at the camera. Sean Careless, I want my Lieutenant Worf Klingon Award for being in the WWE the longest at the time. They used to have awards. I won one. It was called, I'm a Star Trek fan too. You have Lieutenant Worf Klingon, keeping your job for a long time, award. You owe it to me. Send it to me.
I know that guy's name. Did he write for Cracked at one?
No, it was something else.
Someone else.
It was another one.
This came up on Dutch's channel because I posted it. Was HIV, hepatitis, that kind of thing? You're bleeding a lot in the ring. You're on a filthy mat. That's a different segment. I understand. You ringworm to staph infection, and I understand all that. But were you ever worried about bleeding, catching a bloodborne virus?
Yeah, always. Always worried about that. Obviously, we do things we don't want to do in wrestling all the time, it seems. We put ourselves in predicaments that are very dangerous and could have long-lasting side effects, and that was something I worried about. I was really worried about staph infection and stuff like that because I would always see and get mat burn on my elbows and stuff like that, but I only got staph infection once later in my career after WWE. Dude, and it sucked. But yeah, we get blood tested on my own a lot. WWE was way more careful, and we would get blood tests and other things done on a yearly basis. But yeah, I mean, I really did worry about that. But man, whatever you believe in, I believe in the grace of God. It just didn't happen as much. Wrestlers are incredibly lucky. You think about all the situations that we put ourselves in voluntarily or involuntarily, and we've really we don't come out of it unscathed, but a lot less scathed than we should be. That common sense should have us have. So yeah, I did worry about that.
I'll finish on this. How do you feel physically after Hardway, Blade, whatever it might be, bleeding copiously? How does it affect you personally? Do you feel drained? Does it get the adrenaline going? Physically, immediately afterwards, how do you feel?
During the match, the adrenaline, but like I said, it's a double-edged sword because you run the risk of a lot of things happening with your blood pressure, blood loss, bleeding out to a certain point, And then as the match goes on, if you are bleeding very profusely and quickly, like Drew, you start to kind of lose your bearings. Now during the finish, maybe you'll forget, maybe you won't know. That's why the instincts of wrestlers are also incredibly underrated. To be able to not, maybe you're not thinking straight, but you kind of know what's going to happen and where you, because you've been in that situation and there's no, if you were young in your career without the experience, it's a lot more dangerous because you start panicking. You really should take it home right away if someone who's not experienced, because things can get bad real quick. But with somebody that's truly experienced, it's an amazing thing to watch, to see a Terry Funk, a Drew McIntyre, the list is much longer than not of people that can function without all their faculties around them. Because it really happens. Now, post match, you have your natural adrenaline coming down, then the adrenaline from the blood loss, then the migraine sets in because it hurts. You got hit in the head with a toolbox. You probably got a concussion. Now you have to worry about all that. Then you go home and you're like, if you're smart, you have a wife, a significant other, you have family or friends that have to watch you because you can't go right to sleep after a show. If you have a concussion and that stuff going on, they're gonna have to wake you every half hour to an hour. That's why in most cases, like with Drew, I really do hope that WWE at least send him to the ER, if not the hospital, local medical facility, sorry, to stay overnight for observation. Those are really, in a really scary way, the make it or break it hours after that. And he might be like, I'm fine, I just got my bell rung. It can be very dangerous. And we're not aware of that because we're, like I said before, just like we think in our ego, oh, this is the greatest thing ever. This is a storyline and this is the best work I've ever done. You need to look at it from the perspective of a normal person, using air quotes, that looks at you and say, you got hit in the head, you got rocked, you lost a lot of blood. We got to check on you every half hour. Let's go to the hospital. That's that's what it feels like. But man, most times guys will just, yeah, just staple my head. I'll go have some drinks, go right to the room and fall asleep and potentially never wake up.
We didn't get to Cody Rhodes and Kevin Owens. We were going to get to. We'll talk about Goldberg returning when he actually returns. I think he's going to be facing Gunther, I suspect, at the Saudi Arabia show in a few weeks. So that should yield some definite interesting stuff that we can talk about on the show in a few weeks' time. I know we said we were going to talk about the Singapore Cane. We're going to have to say that for another show. Honestly, we're
Well, I am going to do the full match breakdown on Patreon from beginning to end.
Okay, there you go then. So,
Look, we'll save the Singapore Cane thing and Hard Way as a part two and how I felt, and I'll tell that story about the psycho shower scene that I created.
perfect. So, with that being said, Patreon, the new it's an old Patreon that Stevie had sort of put on hiatus for a bit until he figured out what to provide for people who were good enough to pay a monthly subscription. Stevie is now bringing the Patreon back with a vengeance. Let me tell you that.
I'm so mad. I'm so vengeful. And you're going to get value out of my vengeance.
And one more thing, if it's a deal breaker, I get nothing from the Patreon. So all your hard-earned money is going straight to Stevie.
I'm still fighting you on that one.
If I know you want to cut me in as well. I was like, no, absolutely not. It's yours, man. So there you go. What can I tell you?
You're such a terrible, selfish person. You're such a terrible, selfish person, right?
I'm depriving my new baby of shoes over this. No, it's fine. So, as I say, you're not supporting me and Stevie, you are supporting Stevie. So if you want to thank Stevie, if you want to get extra content, all the stuff that we basically can't put on YouTube or on the podcast or anything will be on the Patreon as well. So I highly encourage you to go visit it and maybe even subscribe, give it a go as well.
I got to plug you. I keep cutting you off.
Okay.
This is my ask for everybody out there besides Patreon. Go check out James's books. He has a book on The Rock, a book on Owen Hart. Both are excellent. Will there be a third book on another retired wrestler? We don't know. We can't get an answer. So please comment below. Let me know if you think you know who I'm talking about. But in all seriousness, James has 2 books. Please check that out. Check out all the incredible interviews on Wrestling Shoot Interviews, also known as WSI. Check out Storytime with Dutch Mantel and let him know these 2 sons of bitches threw you under the bus. What say you, Dutch? What say
Well,
you?
hopefully I'll get
What
to
say you? What am I signing the Declaration of Independence? What say you?
Well, hang on. Dutch has got a mustache like a prospector, or a Civil War veteran. So I think it's like a time appropriate for that kind of rhetoric.
Maybe he has a Stargate.
Let's hope. Well, hopefully he got in the Stargate and escaped the hurricane. I'm going to message him now and make sure he's okay, or see what's up with him. Hopefully, Storytime with Dutch came out today. If it didn't, it might just be Storytime with James, I guess. Or we'll just have to put out more vintage content for another week, so I'm sorry about that. But for now, everybody, thank you so much for watching. We will catch you again next Friday. This show is on YouTube every Friday, clips out every day, or for the most part every day. All podcast platforms, blah, blah, blah. And we will see you again next Friday.